It's time for Windows Weekly. Paul Thurrott is here. Richard Campbell is here. We're going to talk about the new AMD-based AI PCs. They're not Copilot Plus PCs, but in some ways, they're actually better. Windows 11 Photos now integrates with Microsoft Designer. We'll talk about AI, some developer news. If you like .NET, you'll like .NET 9 Preview 6. And once again, Paul's mad at Microsoft over the Xbox Game Pass. All that and more coming up next on Windows Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott and Richard Campbell. Episode 890, recorded Wednesday, July 17th, 2024. Nub muscles. It's time for Windows Weekly. Yeah, the show we talk about Windows Weekly. With these I almost said clowns. These cats. You're not clowns.
I thought you were going to say cats. It sounded like cats.
It started cats. And then, anyway, that cat on the left there, that's Paul Thurrott, Thurrott.com. One of the premier, I just realized Delphi 3 Super Bible's gone.
Yep.
You're missing it already,
It's
are you?
the hardest loss of all.
Well, it was the only thing holding down the sheets there. So
Yeah.
they're not going to flap in
It makes for a good laptop stand or like a monitor stand.
You will be happy to know that I have taken that and your fabulous Windows secrets that you did with Brian Livingston to the new studio, to my attic, and they will have a place of honor.
You could smuggle something in there to like a prison, like they would have like a cutout for like a knife. That
put
thing
a
could
file
hold
in
like
file
an
and a knife in
entire
there.
array of weapons.
You could. Hey, Your Honor, I was just bringing him a book about Windows. On his left, your right, Richard Campbell of Run As Radio fame. He is up at the house, the Mad Park house.
Yep, I'm in Mad Park. Mad Park's a happy place.
It's a beautiful day in Canada.
Yeah, it's lovely up here. Just waiting for the forest fires to get out of control.
It's morning again in Canada.
You need a Delphi 12 book, man, because Delphi 3 is a little old.
Paul, are you working on it? Is 12 the current version?
Other stuff.
12's the current version.
Wow. Well,
Maybe a Delphi.net book.
I love it. I'm very happy to have the Delphi 3 Super Bible.
There you go.
And I have a bookshelf, and I'm going to put all our hosts' books on it. About that much. So, Windows, we're going to do something we've not done lately. We're going to start by talking about Windows.
This is weird.
Yep.
This is weird.
Yeah, the other stuff's getting boring, so I'm going back to
Windows. The original. The one, the only.
The most comfortable complaining about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like riding a bike. So I've spent the better part of the last, 3 years complaining about Microsoft and how it updates Windows all over the place. And they just announced they found a new way to update Windows. And I'm just like, you're going to be kidding me. But actually, this one's fine. It's fine. It's not something that will ever impact anybody. It's just something that's happening behind the scenes. So for individuals, you're not going to really see any changes. But they're basically doing this differential update now on some, but not all, monthly cumulative updates for Windows 11 going forward, starting with Windows 24 version 24H. Sorry, Windows 11 version 24H2. So, I don't know. I'm not even sure. Microsoft has made a lot of these kind of announcements later where they're like, hey, we're doing this thing on the back end. It doesn't really change anything, but let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Okay. So this new type of update is called a checkpoint cumulative update, as opposed to a normal cumulative updates. Cumulative updates, as the name suggests, are cumulative. So if you miss a month and you go to update, you'll get the next month instead, and it will include everything from the previous month. But the checkpoint cumulative updates will be smaller because they'll look at what's on your PC and only download what you need, the differential.
This is something that the Exchange team has been doing for a long time.
Yeah. This is something Microsoft started talking about in, I don't know, 2002, probably with Branch Office and what became Windows Server 2003.
And it was because we wanted if you're running an Exchange server, like we had these security problems and these little
Mhm.
quick patches were good. And then you get into a tangle because maybe you've installed it, maybe you hadn't. And then the next CU would just sort
Yeah.
of sync you back up again.
It's a dependency problem.
Yeah. They were also they were also lower tested. Like you
Yeah.
only install this because you have this problem or you have this concern, and then the main CU would clean you up.
I don't know if we as individuals will ever get to see this happening. I don't know that we'll ever see anything.
It's not a
the way they
consumer thing.
describe it.
Yeah.
It doesn't
Yeah,
seem like
this
it. Some admins who are on certain deployment technologies might see two files instead of one, so you'll have some sort of a indication that something new is going on. But it's funny. There's like one of the files is like this a really tiny checkpoint file, and the other one is what they call a cumulative payload, which I think is what we dropped on Hiroshima, if I'm not mistaken. It's it just I think it's a dynamic file that's created based on your specific configuration. So it could
Yeah.
differ from PC to PC. So
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Hiroshima was a service pack.
serves the feature pack. Yeah. Yeah. It was a PC reset. So anyway, I read this whole thing like I do a couple of times. I'm like, all right, there's got to be something in here that makes sense. That why would they? And nope, there isn't. And it's also one of those things where I think if you weren't really paying attention, or even if you were, you might read this and think you weren't doing this all along. But
Yeah,
They
but at the same time, you also have that sense of you're not going to do this actually.
yeah, and oh, you know what? So okay, here's the one little hint I did get from this description. We've talked about how with right before Windows 11 23H2 came out, Microsoft decided we're going to ship everything that was going to be in that update out to 22H2 because we want to
Right.
make sure that everybody has Copilot. And 23H2 was going to be a huge update.
Mhm.
So everyone in 23H2 got this massive monthly cumulative update, probably September, October, depending. And then they got 23H2 a month later, and it was just nothing. It was like a little enablement package, no big deal. And in fact, some of them didn't. And so one of the things we've talked about since then is that 22 and 23H2 are both the same feature set. They've got these two versions of Windows that are just moving forward with the same features.
Features, yes. Why?
So-
Why?
This
Fine.
has this is might be what inspired this because the problem with cumulative updates is the same thing that's good about them. They're cumulative, so they get
Right.
bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And so when Microsoft does something like they did with 22 and 23H2, or they just have a release, as they do sometimes, where it's just an enablement package, it's still the same code base as the previous version. Instead of having 12 months of updates, of cumulative updates, now you're looking at 24 of them. And so
Right.
over the course of that process, those things get bigger and bigger. And I think this is maybe their solution to that problem that they created. So,
I'm also,
whatever.
I don't think much of it from the bandwidth point of view of the consumer, but think about the
Yeah.
bandwidth consumption for
Yeah.
Microsoft.
Yep.
That to double or triple the total number of bytes downloaded, like that's pushing exabytes. Like it's crazy
Yeah.
numbers, right?
They must,
For
there's a
billions of
setting
instances.
in Windows Update that is probably, I'm sure, for businesses is something you can enable via policy where you only have in a home, you'd have one computer that would download the update and then the others would
That's
get it from that computer.
update
on the network,
catalog
right?
technique.
Yeah.
You go to the catalog
Yep.
and you download.
Yeah,
it.
so they must. I mean, I assume they're doing something like that, but whatever. It's still at scale. I mean, anything you could do to make these things smaller leads to faster download times, faster install times.
Yeah, I think
And,
you guys are very hopeful to think they would do that at the consumer level. I mean, we do it at in the enterprise level with Windows Update Server and the like, because you're trying to keep everything in sync. But if you're the
Yeah.
Windows team and you want to do A/B testing, the idea that you'd have everybody in the house get the same version, like, there's one guy in Paul's house who has multiple versions. right?
That's
It's pretty
funny.
clear evidence that they don't.
Wow.
Yeah,
I'm doing A/B testing with my wife. Honey,
Right.
how do you like your version of Windows? That is
you
that is a little bit of an issue, isn't it?
I do that. All my computers now have a sticky note on them, so I can tell
Oh wow.
at a glance what it is running because I have
Right.
to keep so many different things, and I want to make sure in this little matrix of testing I have to do that it's like this nope this one here it is good here's the one that's like 22 home x64 good, and then you go from there, but whatever. Yep, that's my life. What else? Okay. So last week I went to New York for an HP event that was largely about AI. Well, it was literally all about AI, but AI across their stack as they see it. And of course, HP is a company that serves both consumers and commercial customers. And in addition to, the computers and printers and things that we know them for, they're also starting to sell a lot of services and do different things. And so they've jumped into this AI PC era with 2 feet. They've rebranded all their computers, starting with those Copilot Plus PCs. And then as new computers come out, we'll see those like that. HP you've got in front of you is an HP EliteBook 1040. If like off the top of my head, I believe that thing would be called an HP EliteBook X, I think is the term, or Ultra. No, I guess X, and then 10, like 10.
Every time we
X10.
mock Microsoft for naming stuff, I look at PC names. Like,
Yeah. Well, their new naming strategy makes sense, but there's all these little caveats to it. It's like if it's an X360 style computer, they used to use that term. Those will be called Flip now. So it's like HP EliteBook X Flip. Okay. So we'll be the next version of that thing, but whatever. That will be a problem for a new day. So the thing I was most interested in was they announced a new AI PC based on a next gen AMD chip that they would not disclose the day I was there. And then Monday came and we now know that it is one of the upcoming AMD chips, and AMD has now released some more information about this, but they announced new generation mobile and desktop chips back at Computex in June. This is based on their new Zen 5 processor technology, like we see it at the Intel side, hybrid, big MPUs, et cetera, et cetera. More efficient. So we know more details about that stuff. The HP is a laptop, again, to me, a little confusingly named because they're just released. Copilot Plus PC is called, let's see if I can get this right, and HP OmniBook, I think, is it X? I don't remember. I'm sorry, I can't. These names are terrible. But this is going to be an HP OmniBook Ultra. So it's running this AMD. What's it called? What is the actual name of this chip? It is called a Ryzen AI 300 series. There are 2 of them. 2 different of the Ryzens, that is, for mobile computers. They're claiming 20 hours of battery life, asterisk, really 13 hours of battery life. 50 or 55 tops MPU, depending on who you ask.
That's a lot of tops.
Yeah. I don't know if tops are like exponential as you go up, like it's the Richter scale or something, but
no one has.
I know.
any
Yeah,
idea what
exactly.
tops means.
I know enough about numbers to know that 50 or 55 is bigger than 45. So definitely better.
but not considered a Copilot Plus PC.
So, well, see, this is part of the interesting thing about this is it verified what I had reported back in June, which was because at the time I went back and looked at very carefully at what everyone said about this, because we all knew next gen Intel AMD chips were coming.
Yep.
And the assumption was that these things would be called Copilot Plus PCs. And we actually don't know that. But we do know they will not be called that at launch because, as we've been saying, there is this exclusivity window. We just don't know when it ends.
Right.
So when this thing launches in August, it will not be called a Copilot Plus PC, but it will get those Copilot Plus PC features at a later date when Microsoft ships a free update, which we know is Windows 11 24H2. So that probably means it will happen in October, but I would say maybe to be safe, October at the earliest, because, it could come via a cumulative update later. The question is, at that time, does that thing become a Copilot Plus PC? Does that even matter? I don't know. I don't know. Nobody's saying. So I would think so, but whatever.
In October is 6 months since build when they announced all that stuff. So that seems like a reasonable window. 6 months.
Yeah. Yeah. We also, this in my little world, my sad little world, there are, people that just kind of hate everything, and they especially hate anything new. And they've just they hate AI. They can't stand Copilot Plus PC. They don't believe in Snapdragon X at all, So this kind of thing gets announced and they're like, so let me get this straight. This thing's going to get 20 hours of battery life. It's an X64 chip, so it's going to run everything natively. It's got a faster NPU than a Copilot Plus PC. So what is the point of Snapdragon X again? And to answer that question, I would point you to the photograph of the side of this laptop, because if you look at it from the side, you will see that the AMD-based
it's 3 feet
computer
tall.
is about twice as thick
Yeah.
as the Snapdragon X. It's going to have a lot of active cooling. It's going to be louder. There's going to be a lot more fan noise. So, the point, such as it is, thin light. It's that always, well, we don't have always connectivity anymore, but it's that the original promise of Windows and ARM, which is just the longevity plus thin and light, and hopefully one day no fans. Although, in my experience with these computers, fans are not actually an issue at all.
Right.
So anyway,
it's great to have a fan in case you need the performance that it needs to cool itself. But
yeah,
as long as that fan on usual use never spins, never makes a sound.
I know this isn't technically true. I know that if you, I don't know, re-rendered a 4K video for 2.5 hours or something, that it would throttle. But I will tell you, there is something magical going on with the MacBook Air, which is just passively cooled. It's just a base M3. It is unbelievably good performance, 15 hours of battery life.
Wow, we're really getting to you, aren't we?
Yeah. Well,
It's just
but it
magic.
runs Mac OS.
Oh,
It's not. It's just the truth. Like, it's amazing. And I don't know exactly what combination of hardware software makes that a reality, but
I think owning the whole
is-
stack makes a big difference.
God,
you
it's
know?
it's amazing.
Although I guess
So-
you could say in some ways Microsoft owns the whole Surface stack. Although it doesn't make the
in some ways.
processors, right?
They don't make the processors.
Yeah.
They don't make the.
I mean, Apple
They don't make the
literally can tune its
GPUs.
processors to
Yeah, that's right.
be optimized for the hardware and the operating system.
Well, they integrated
Yeah, no,
everything
I mean,
into one chip in the first place.
Right.
There's you pay a little bit with your soul. You have to use Mac OS, which is terrible.
Aw.
But
Poor
You have to
No, but
live
it-
in
but
the
no,
wa-
but
the
that-
trade
but-
is you live in the walled garden.
right. And look, some people embrace that, just like
Mhm.
some people embrace Jonestown and Kool-Aid. But it's there's good and bad to my opinion. But you can't argue with the uptime and the performance. It's just incredible. It just is. And I don't think we're ever going to see that in a Windows PC. I just don't. There's no way. Not that combination. But Snapdragon X guess is pretty close. And then it was, I guess it was Thursday when this event occurred. They were being very coy about the chip and would not discuss this. So Monday came, or maybe a couple of days before they sent some information out. But Monday, AMD started putting out more information about these chips. And not a hardware guy, but I'm fascinated by the different approaches that AMD and Intel are taking to try to kind of hybridize their x64 chips now, to make them more like ARM. Is very, very interesting. And it's not my area. I'm probably going to misspeak here, but I do know from reviewing laptops for many years that if you think about just something like Intel, just to keep it simple, they would typically have like these 15-watt U series chips that would go into thin and light computers, right? Sometimes they would have a 7 or 9 watt variant that would be for like tablets and really, really, really thin things. They would have like an H series and K series and different series, but H series would be like the high performance version. And then for the 12th and 13th gen, they had a P series that sat in the middle. So the H series were 56 watt parts. The P series 28 watts. And AMD has done the same thing until this generation of chips. So I mentioned that there are only 2 versions of the mobile versions of the processors. There's also desktop versions. They both can scale from a TDP perspective. They can. It is up to the PC maker to configure it to run at 15 watts, 28 watts, or whatever the figure is, 56 watts. They can run up to whatever number. They're not going to sell a lot of different chips. They're just going to sell 2. And they're scalable from a kind of power consumption, power output perspective. And it just depends on how you use them. So different way of doing things. Very interesting. The other thing I just kind of point to, because I don't think anyone ever really thinks about this stuff, but a year ago this summer, HP released something called the Dragonfly Pro in Windows PC and Chromebook variants. The Chromebook is now a Chromebook Plus because it meets that specification, sort of like the Copilot Plus PC thing. But the the Windows version had a special AMD chipset at the time, and AMD and HP worked together to subvert the power management capabilities in Windows and do their own thing. And so this chip, their approach was, we don't have performance cores and efficiency cores. We have cores. They can scale up and down. You can turn some of them off. So there are times when the PC is not doing too much, where this thing runs at a very low power consumption because only a couple of the cores are on. It was good for leaving it on overnight or sleeping overnight, and it wouldn't drain the battery, but it could fire up cores as it needed. But for this to work properly, they couldn't use the power management in Windows. So they completely redid that. And HP has done a lot of that type of stuff since then. They're doing it in Intel-based machines too. In fact, Leo, that computer you have has an updated version of the system that I'm talking about, this kind of SmartSense, whatever it's called.
Yeah. It's cool.
And
it's
very
battery
interesting.
Life as a result, by the way.
Yeah, and Meteor Lake, in my experience, has been garbage. In fact, Meteor Lake on this exact computer, but without that software, was garbage. I experienced that with the ZBook Firefly G11, I think was the thing, but it's almost exactly the same computer, but it didn't have any of that stuff I just described. Plus, it had a D GPU too. But so yeah, this is, PC makers are starting to work around this stuff. But the reason I mention this is because a year ago, HP, because I was like, excuse me, it's like, I have a question. You must talk to Microsoft, right? I mean, and they said, yeah. So we can't really talk about this too much, but Microsoft is aware this is a problem. They know this stuff has to be extensible. They know they have to let us get in there and be able to make these changes. Chipset makers like Intel and AMD and Qualcomm now want to make these changes too. They want their systems to work as well as they can work, right? So my assumption was, by this point, we would have seen this occur in Windows, and there has been nothing on that front, like zero. And I don't think we're going to see it in 24H2, right? Even though there's updates coming, et cetera, et cetera. But this is still something that kind of needs to happen. And you mentioned Apple and owning the whole stack. And, one of the advantages they have is when they have this kind of a problem and they want to solve it, they own the whole thing. They change the Mac. They don't change, they don't have to subvert anything. It's theirs.
Right.
So this is an issue. This is the other side of the sword. We have all this choice. We have all these different designs. We have different companies making different kinds of products, and they're running into these walls. And because they don't own the whole stack like Apple does, they have to do that kind of stuff. So I suspect, in fact, I'm positive this new AI PC, I'm sure it's doing some kind of power management, shenanigans, I'll call it, to achieve whatever level of battery life it will get. So we'll see. Anyway.
Actually, spec-wise, it sounds like it's superior to the Copilot Plus PCs. Spec-wise.
Yeah. I mean, is
it much more expensive?
Copilot Plus.
Because
no,
that Yoga Slim you have is like $1,300. It's not.
It's a bargain.
Yeah. No, this is going to start at about $1,450 which, by the way, it's a consumer. It's like a prosumer device. I mean, their EliteBooks are started about this price. So it's not quite $500 more than the cheapest Copilot Plus PC, but it's also a slightly different kind of computer, even though it's an AI PC. Obviously, it's a laptop, but it's not a thin and light. This thing has
it's a workstation.
I don't know what to call it. So AMD Radeon 800M graphics are, depending on who you ask, they're embedded. They're what they used to call like an APU. Remember, are they discrete graphics? Are they, they're kind of, everything's changing a little bit. I will say I don't not used it to this capacity, and it's not aimed at this market, but I suspect you could throw a modern game on there and it would run really well, right? These are powerful creator class computers, maybe would be the way to say it. So we'll see. I wish there was more AMD out in the world and less Intel. So,
do you think that there's always that big red versus big blue thing? Do you think AMD's processors are superior or just a good lower cost alternative?
I think they might be both.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting.
Because when you say superior, that means a lot of different things. But
it's true. I mean, bang for the buck is one way of talking about superior.
But also just how about just basic reliability, right? Or I don't know what you call this, but every day I still do this. Every one of these computers, every morning I get up and I open the lid and they all come on and I'm like, this is the best. This never happens. Well, I should say never, but very rare in the x64 world for that to be the case without, hibernation and slow boot ups and all that kind of stuff. So, Intel, I've expressed the issues I've had with Intel chips over the previous 2 generations, including the current gen. I think Meteor Lake is a major step back when it comes to reliability. We're starting to see and battery life, and we're starting to see reports from others who have been complaining about 12th and 13th gen, the previous 2 gens as well. I think Intel belatedly got the message on the way the world was going. It was telegraphed 20 years ago, but whatever. And they're racing to catch up. And in the race to catch up, I think they're making mistakes and they're breaking things. And I am very leery of their latest gen chipset. It's an orphan. The next one's going to be nothing like it. So this thing's just going to kind of sit out there alone. I don't see a good future for these computers. So, we'll see. Is AMD any better? The truth is, I just don't see AMD enough out with the reviews that I do.
I mean,
to have a good opinion
from
about
an IT perspective, when we were looking at it from servers, they tended to have more cores per dollar, but they were simpler cores.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
which is the ARM approach,
That's
right?
ARM
In
too,
a way.
yeah.
It was sort of but it straddled the 2 lines. The sneaky part was when Microsoft started licensing by core, suddenly AMD based servers became much more expensive than Intel based servers.
Right. There you go. Yeah. That's funny. Microsoft licensing.
Yes, very funny.
So AMD, I mentioned the AMD chip that's in the Dragonfly Pro. You guys can go look this up and see what this thing is, but and how it works differently than mainstream x64 chips did at the time. And maybe that's becoming more common now. But AMD's approach to the ARM challenge is different from Intel's, so I think we're going to have an interesting battle and some good conversations. We'll, lots and lots of people are going to review these computers, and we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I thought they were Intel in those Dragonfly Pros. But
every one of those computers but the Pro was Intel. Yeah, every previous Dragonfly, whatever. The one that came out mid-year last year was AMD.
They made an AMD one, because I see, all Intel Core when I'm looking at them.
Yep.
But.
Yeah, I don't. Look up the one that comes. Yeah, I think there's only one Dragonfly.
Might have been only for 1 year.
Yeah.
Or was it the Chromebook version?
The Chromebook is Intel.
Okay.
Yeah.
This naming strategy sucks.
Yeah, well, I'd say they fixed it, but they changed it. I'll say that. Yeah. So, yeah, the Pro is an AMD Ryzen 7 something, but it's a chip that at the time was only available in this one computer. I'm not sure.
They also made Pros with Intel in them too, because why not confuse the situation?
Yeah. Anyway, I welcome my AMD and/or Qualcomm future. Either one's good with me. And by the way, that Dragonfly Pro got killer battery.
You're an anything but Intel guy now.
Because this is what happens. I open the lid, nothing. It doesn't turn on. When I turn it on manually, the thing fires up. You can hear a jet engine, and this is like a brand new computer. I just got one of these. It's a new one. Like again, it just keeps happening, and I just don't understand. I have a little AMD based. I think it's a Yoga something. It's kind of a thick little device. It's only 13-inch screen. And based on all my Snapdragon X stuff, I was like, I'm curious. I'm going to throw Doom 2016 on here. 90, 100 frames per second, no problem. Looks beautiful. It runs great. And it's just a little stupid laptop. It's nothing special. The Intel equivalent, which I haven't reviewed yet, and I'm not actually sure I'm going to. It's so bad, but can barely get out of its own way. Even file copy operations are slow on this thing. Like it's crazy.
Oh, that's terrible.
No, it's not an Atom, but it kind of feels like that. It's weird. There's something wrong with it. It's like a U series Meteor Lake. It's terrible.
Yeah. The Studio 2 that I picked up at the end of last year, which is the pedestal design to make it seem like it's thinner than it actually is. And that lower pedestal has vents all the way around.
Yeah.
So I've been running a couple of GPU intensive workloads that kicked out enough heat that it warped the side of my cell phone case.
Oh no.
Oh
Yeah.
God, I thought you were going to say it warped the PC itself.
The
But
machine,
okay, that's-
no, because it's a metal case, and there's a reason it's a metal.
what
case.
is that's this is the Surface Laptop Studio Laptop 2,
Studio
and
2,
it is a what's the chip? It's like it's a weird.
i7.
Yeah, but it's like isn't it basically a desktop chip? It's like
I
a
think it is, yeah, and it's
previous
got
gen,
an
like
and
13th
it's got an
gen, whatever.
RTX 3070 in it. So,
Yeah, and they they tacked an NPU onto it.
yeah, but it's it is the GPU firing up that.
Yeah,
makes
is it
hot.
NVIDIA? So it's Intel. So it's
It's an
NVIDIA graphics.
NVIDIA RTX,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
it's plenty powerful, like it does
Yeah.
the job, but that thing's no fooling hot. You would not put that on your lap. You would sterilize yourself.
Sometimes that's a good thing. Depends what your
Some people
goals
need-
are.
Look, we have choices. That's the beauty of the PC industry. We have this
Yeah.
range of choices. There, I have these guys on my site all the time. They would never even consider something new. They want these old things. They work great for what they do, and it's like okay. And I don't care about battery life, or some of them claim that the battery life is fine. I think there's a syndrome going on there, but whatever, that's okay. Whatever works for you is fine.
You have
Yeah,
the
and
Slim 7X. You have the one that I
Yeah.
mean, I'm kind
This
of
is-
lusting after it. It looks really nice.
Yeah, it's really solid. So I just reviewed it. They're going to send me they have a ThinkPad based on Snapdragon X as well. So I'm going to get that soon.
Oh
I
yeah.
guess.
See, I'm a ThinkPad guy, so this is not a ThinkPad.
It's not the thinnest thing. It's just like what is it, like a T14S?
Oh,
So it's
okay.
not an X1 or anything like that. But
Yeah.
it's it's fine. I mean, it's fine. I think the big deal there's two big things with this particular computer compared to the other Snapdragon X PCs. OLED display, 14.5 inches, beautiful.
Mm.
Reflective, but gorgeous. And the RAM and storage upgrades are super cheap. For less than $100, I think you can go from 16 to 32 gigs of RAM and from 512 to 1 terabyte.
Yeah, that blew me
and
away.
If you, yep. And then even like the Windows, if you want to go from home to Pro, $28. Like that's
Wow.
Microsoft will charge you $99 for that upgrade. That's a good price.
Point being, buy it fully loaded.
Yep. You'd be stupid not to buy it fully loaded. Yep.
But they're also making a T series, right?
The T series ThinkPad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that what you meant? Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
Isn't
a
it funny?
ThinkPad version.
So somebody in Discord, it's Keith. Keith's 512 says it's made in China. It's so funny because it's been long
I
enough
think
now
it's
that
owned by Lenovo.
it's
which
owned
is
by
a Chinese
Lenovo,
company.
right? That
Yeah.
you kind of forget that IBM was the ThinkPad, and then
Yeah,
they
right.
sold it to
But they sold it.
Lenovo. But Lenovo's done a good job. I think Lenovo makes fine.
They've done a
stuff.
great job. Yep.
Yeah.
And they
Well,
haven't
they've
run
certainly
into any
protected
of
the
these.
brand.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
ThinkPad is still a ThinkPad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
It-
100%.
It still has the weird red nub, and you either like that nub or you don't.
Right.
Yeah.
Or you just buy it because the rear red nub tells you that it's a ThinkPad.
That's starting
never
to go
use
away,
it.
by the way.
Yeah, I think the new one doesn't have it, right?
The track point is starting to go away.
Is there a
but
track
yeah,
point
they
on
kept
that one?
for a long
On the
time.
one you have?
Yep.
It is.
Is there one on the Yoga? Because there is
I don't
one on
have
on
the-
ThinkPad.
Oh, you don't have a ThinkPad.
I don't have the-
You have a Yoga.
I don't have
that's
that
right.
one yet.
Yeah.
No, but I
Apparently
can't
the thing-
remember.
It's
I
like the
can't
red
remember.
dot on Leica's. It doesn't make any difference, but it's
No.
nice to know. It's
I have
I used
a
to-
buddy
well,
who works for
back in the
ThinkPad,
day.
so I was going to get one at cost, but
Oh,
it has
nice.
the red nub, and that kind of turns me off.
You don't like the
It doesn't. It being there doesn't get in the way. But
know.
but when Windows trackpads were terrible, which
Mm.
actually most of them still are,
Really?
they
Wow.
well, oh yeah,
That's disappointing.
I love the track point because it was so precise.
Right.
Because otherwise, I'd have to bring a mouse to do the precise work I had to do in
You
graphics
don't
or
want
whatever.
a mouse to do a man's work. You gotta.
No, but that thing was that precise. It was fantastic. But now touchpads, trackpads, whatever, have gotten a lot better, and so I'm fine now with a trackpad almost all the time for everything. So, it's kind of weird. Like when I use this now, I find it hard to move. Like the little muscles in my finger aren't there anymore because I don't use the trackpad.
You lost your nub
the trackpad.
muscles?
I lost my. It's like the opposite of Nintendo thumb or whatever. Like
Yeah.
I've lost that muscle in my
muscles.
index finger.
Your nub muscles.
My track point muscle is has gone away. But anyway, yeah, I think we moved past the point where.
What's
we
your
actually need
favorite
that.
one of these now? You've tried what, 4 of
Yeah,
them?
yeah. You've got a bunch of them.
Well, 3, and I've got a 4th coming.
Right.
Well, so there's two different things here, right?
Mm.
Which is the one I would recommend to people, and which is the one
One
I
you like.
would want for myself.
Right.
The one I can recommend safely to everyone is the one I just reviewed, the yoga. It's the perfect combination. It has 3 USB-C ports. They're all USB 4, 40 gigabytes. They're identical. You never see that.
Nice.
Some on each side of the device. The OLED display. It's 14.5, not 14, 16:10, perfect. The cheap memory and storage upgrades, like I said. The keyboard's great. Touchpad's okay. It's not fantastic, but it's fine. It's thin and light, and it's 11-ish hours of battery life, 11 and a half, whatever it was. It's great.
It looks gorgeous, I have to say.
I lately, last couple of years, have been trending toward bigger computers, bigger laptops. So the thing that I bought for myself, which is a Surface Laptop 15, is closer to kind of the MacBook Air style, just look and feel.
Mm-hmm.
But really, it's the bigger display. Oh, the other thing this thing has, by the way, none of these computers have fingerprint readers, which I don't like.
God, those are going away, Paul. They're very rare now.
Well, okay, but they're
Really?
you will see them on
This HP
Copilot
Elite
Plus
book
PCs.
that I'm going to lose in about an hour has a fingerprint reader.
Right, but the HP EliteBook Snapdragon X computer does not.
Yeah, interesting.
Doesn't have it.
Huh.
Yeah. So I don't
Drivers.
like that, but the Lenovo and the HP both have presence sensing. So if you're going to use this thing with a camera,
The Hello is
it's really nice
fast and
because
easy,
it turns on when you walk up, so you instantly sign in. There's no wait whatsoever, and when you walk away, it signs out and turns everything off. It's nice. The Surface does not have that, so I don't know why Microsoft, which put this into Windows, did not include it in their own computer, but it doesn't have presence sensing. So it also doesn't have a fingerprint reader, so you have to walk up, tap the thing. It comes right on. It does come right on. The instant on is there. But it's the one thing. But
And I mean the camera
like the form
Hello
factor.
approach is everything, gives you the biological security feature. Like, why put a fingerprint reader in if you've got that?
So my feeling is that this choice is important because some people like to explicitly sign in. You can disable. You don't have to use
Hello.
Windows Hello. You don't have to use presence sensing. You can turn all that stuff off. But
Sometimes
I
Hello
kind of
disables
like the-
itself, and you have to remember how to log in.
what's that?
Yeah, you still have to
Sometimes
enter your
Hello's-
PIN or your password. Yeah. But the thing about Hello is it just does it, right? And I agree
Yeah.
with you, Paul. I think I would prefer that I have proactively put in my finger on the thing.
Yeah, that's my preference. So I just like to see both. But I also often have multiple accounts on a computer, and so I like to have different ways to sign in. And if I walk up and I just sign in, and I'm trying to use the second account for the book or whatever I'm working on, that's a random use case. It's not a big deal. But
So
I just think
use
that
different fingers for different accounts. Is that where we are?
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
Careful.
I do.
Careful.
Guess which one I used for my book account.
I have to be honest,
Yes.
the fingerprint
That's what it
reader
says.
doesn't always work, and Hello always does. The camera. So
The camera,
yeah, I'm kind of Face ID now.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
If you wear
in general,
glasses, you want to
fingerprints
train it
as
with
identity.
both. And
Thing
all
is,
that.
the Macs do not have Face ID. They don't have Hello.
Which
They
is
only
crazy.
have Touch
They
ID.
they do have a giant notch, and
could.
they don't have Face ID.
Yeah, they
which is
easily
crazy.
could.
Yep,
Yeah.
I agree.
Well, and
But for me,
fingerprint
I don't care
readers
because I
have
just
more
wanna-
security problems.
The finger thing is explicit and works fast.
Do you think this is the fingerprint less secure than Face ID?
That's what the pros are saying.
Huh.
Right, is they have more problems with fingerprint readers with the way that they encode data.
Huh.
Like the face is much more effective.
Well, the Windows Hello ESS, they require a specific kind of fingerprint reader, which, by the way, is the kind that Lenovo's always been using. It's that
Mhm.
finger on match or match on print, whatever the technology is. It's physically separated from the rest of the system, so
right.
it stores everything locally in its own secure enclave. It doesn't
Nice.
interact with the rest of the system, so it's its own little thing, and you have to have that style for Windows Hello ESS. Anyway, they're coming. We just don't have
Just
them.
spits out
pushed yet.
tokens.
Let us pause. Seems like a
Mhm.
good place to do it. Take a breather, enjoy life, smell the roses, while I talk about 1Password. How about that? Our sponsor.
security.
Yes.
Interesting.
Interesting. You may remember that we talked a lot about a company called Collide. Kolide. And I was a big fan. I have Collide socks, and I actually wear them. But Collide got acquired by 1Password a few months ago. And now they have joined together. Well, let me tell you a little story. Imagine, you gotta use your imagination. Imagine your company's security is like the quad on a college campus, you know? There are nice brick paths between the buildings. Those are the buildings and the paths, the company-owned devices with IT-approved apps and managed employee identities. Then there are the paths people actually use, right? There's always, right through the grass, there's always a path, just dirt. Those are the unmanaged devices, the BYODs, the shadow IT apps, non-employee identities like contractors. Those are the shortcuts through the grass. Most security tools only work on the happy brick paths. Unfortunately, your security problems almost always happen on the dirt paths, the shortcuts, right? Have I gone too far with this analogy? 1Password Extended Access Management is the first security solution that brings all those unmanaged devices, those apps, those identities, all the shadow IT and the BYOD, all under your control, which is great because it ensures that every user's credentials are strong and protected, right? They have to prove they're themselves, but every device also is known and known healthy. Every app is visible. This is not a fairy tale. This doesn't require any imagination. This is 1Password Extended Access Management. It solves the problems traditional IAM and MDM just can't touch. Can't touch this. It's security for the way we work today. It's available now to companies that use Okta. Coming later this year, this is really good news, to Google Workspace and Microsoft Entra. So if you've been saying, oh, but we don't use Okta, stay tuned. Check it out, 1password.com/Windows Weekly. 1Password. That's the number 1, PASSWORD.com/Windows Weekly. Back to Paul and Richard. And let's talk about being an insider. He was the insider. He walks alone by night.
This came up with the very first story. You know, Microsoft talks about the stuff they're doing on the back end. Related to this, they've been talking a lot lately about things that like no one should care about. Like, hey, we redesigned part of File Explorer. It's using the Windows App SDK now, and it's like, okay, what does that mean? Oh, it means the address bar is not going to work. Remember that? You know, I don't know why they talk about this stuff, but they also talk about things like, hey, we redesigned the Photos app and we're using actually the same technology that they use for the File Explorer app. You're like, okay, is it any different? No, it's the same. It's just we just redid it. You know, we refactored it with like a new code base. You're like, okay, is it faster? No, it's just different. And you're like, why are you telling us this? Like we have these weird conversations, you know. So today, Microsoft made an announcement about Microsoft Designer, which is that AI-powered, you know, Copilot-based graphic design app that is tied into the image creation stuff, right? But the real announcement to me was actually about the Photos app, because that new Photos app now has a Designer button at the top, and it will launch into this Designer. It's a web app, like a website, but you can from Photos now edit an image, not something, I guess, an image with Designer, in addition to the other options that were there before, like you could open in Paint or whatever, right? And okay, that's kind of interesting. They deployed this to the world today. So if you're in the Insider program, it doesn't matter which channel, you're going to get this. If you're on Stable, yeah, you got it. Like I got it this morning. Like they never tested it. It's only a button. It's not a big deal. It's not like there's an additional in-app AI-based photo editing features. You actually leave the app, but kind of interesting. So Designer remains I guess it's a PWA. It's a web app, right? So you can access it from the web. You can get it from the Microsoft Store because PWAs can be installed and used like apps. And the mobile app is now available in Stable, like not pre-release version, on Android and iOS. And and it has other integrations now with Word and PowerPoint, et cetera, et cetera. But Designer to me has always been kind of a poor man's Canva. Every time I look at it, I'm like, I don't know. I don't get this. The image creation stuff that's really Copilot is also called Designer for some reason. It's, part of it, I guess. It's, they're trying to put everything everywhere, but
Yeah, good luck being sure you got the right one.
Yeah.
It's a
I know.
bad name for finding it.
Yeah. So the one thing that's kind of cool about Microsoft Designer is there's a feature in the Photos app if you have a Copilot Plus PC called Imagery Style. And that's the one where I took a photo of my wife and I turned it into like a Renaissance painting or whatever, different styles. And that's actually a feature now of
So
Designer
both
up in the
people
web.
with Copilot Plus PCs can try that.
Yeah, it still is very limited. So now you can do that in the cloud through Designer. So that's kind of fun. It's actually one of the few Copilot Plus PC features I really liked. It has all those, magic eraser type features now that you would expect from an AI photo editing solution, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So
Yeah.
whatever.
That's
fine.
cool.
Yeah.
And it's exactly that. Like, just take a picture, fire it up to it, and see what happens.
Yeah.
What
I was that was the one. Like I said, the one thing I actually kept throwing pictures through it. I was like, this looks really cool. Like I can't think of a use for it.
Mhm.
I don't really need it for anything. But I was like, okay, no, this is pretty good. And then unless something changes while we're recording the show,
And that's
there haven't
happened.
been, as it can happen. We did have for the first time in a while a bunch of insider builds last week, and I think the previous show we talked about a canary build, and now we have the other channels are all accounted for. So last week after we did the show, they put out a new dev build. They had, remember, paused the rollout of new features in dev for some reason. They had done the same thing with the release preview before during the 24H2 recall mess. Those features are now re-rolling out, if you will, to dev. So if you're in there and you've got that switch turned on where you get the new features, that's happening. Nothing. Well, no, actually, that's not fair. There's some interesting stuff happening. So they're going to allow drag and drop apps from the pinned section of the start menu down to the taskbar to pin them on the taskbar. You just drag them down. It's like, oh, okay. Also in the release preview channel, and we're going to get to that in a moment. They've improved the widgets on the lock screen without doing that one improvement I think they need to do, which is let us choose which are there, right? You can turn them all on or turn them all off, but you can't select which ones are there yet. We'll get there. And they're doing that improvement to the widgets button on the taskbar we already talked about with other channels where they've improved the graphics that are there for the alerts and the little weather icons and all that stuff. It's just kind of nicer looking. Nothing major. But the other two channels are actually very interesting. So in the beta build that was released last week, they're redesigning the homepage of the File Explorer yet again, right? So if you're familiar with this, there's a quick access section at the top, which is replicated in the navigation bar. And then they have recent and favorite sections. You can arbitrarily turn those all on or off. And if you sign in with an Enter ID account, you also get it's called recommended. And the recommended section will have files from across your organization based on projects you're working on with other people. So what they're looking at adding is yet another new section. This one's called shared. And these are the files that are shared with you. We're running out of space. So what they're doing is under quick access, they're putting those other 3 or 4, depending on how you sign in, sections in as sort of like tabs, right? And so instead of having them all top to bottom, you've got quick access and you've got tabs for recent, favorites, and shared. And if you're on Entra, recommend, right? And I'm like, yeah. I was talking to Laurent about this, the guy who does the news. He goes, you're really up on this. He's like, what's different here? And I'm like, okay. So we kind of stepped through it. And I was like, you know what? I normally don't like them futzing with things, and I still don't in a way, but this is logical enough. There's nothing wrong with this. And it kind of mimics the way that, Office.com or the Microsoft 365 and OneDrive web and local all kind of look. So it's fine. And then there's other changes. There like a little AI button on the taskbar when you're using Windows Studio Effects or other AI powered features, kind of like you see like a microphone icon when you're using that microphone. Like, okay, yeah, that's pretty good. Smaller date time display, right? Which I actually I wish I could find this now. I should have put this in the notes, but they're enabling a very small date and time. You can turn it off, by the way, if you don't want that there, but you can. And soon we'll be able to make it smaller. And I made a version of this where the date and time were next to each other. And I'm like, if you're going to do that, you just make it, half the height, and then the taskbar becomes the menu bar from Mac OS 10 or Mac OS 10, right? I mean, it looks just like
default,
right? I did like a little mock-up, and I'm like, what does this look like? And he's like, that looks like the Mac, and I'm like, exactly. And like they're going there. Like
finally,
yeah. Yeah, so that's kind of interesting. And then the most interesting one in a way, because this is stuff that will be coming out soon to us in stable, is the release preview build they put out. So we'll see on the timing of this, but it is, what is the date? We always do this now because every 2 weeks we get something new. Next Tuesday is week D. Tuesday is when we get the preview update. And don't be surprised if in 22H2, 23H2, and 24H2, you see these features appear as in a preview update. So you can right click on a file explorer tab and duplicate the tab, nothing major. That drag and drop pinning from the pin section of start down to the taskbar, that's part of it. And then because it's, another month, we're going to have more changes to nearby sharing based on whether or not you have Wi-Fi and or Bluetooth turned on. So not a big deal. But remember, we last month, 22 and 23H2 got a ton of new features, all based on stuff in 24H2. 24H2 got nothing. So I'm guessing that in preview this month and then in August on Patch Tuesday, we're going to see the first post-release new features for 24H2. And I think these are them, maybe all of them. Okay. We'll see.
And this is by the fall, 22H2 should go away, and we'll just have 23 and 24H2, even though they're going to be feature identical.
Yep, that's right.
Unless you're running a Copilot Plus PC.
Right. So for this little magical slice in time, which really is just a couple of months when you think about it, it's going to be basically, well, now I guess, but also, August, September, maybe into October. These three versions of Windows 11 will all have the same features, basically, except for the Copilot Plus stuff. Yeah. Yep. And then, the other little, I'm behind on this, but there's all these limitations in 24H2 with regards to new installs and getting around the online Microsoft account requirements, et cetera. So I got to look at that. But there's some other changes. Yeah. But as far as the actual feature set of the OS once you're in, they are and will be for a little while identical. Also, there was a Windows 10 build to the release preview channel, which should excite everybody. There are no new features.
Nor should there be, right?
Yeah, I know. It's like, we heard you wanted new features. Like, where did you hear that? But no one said that. No one ever said that.
I've got 2 Win 10 machines here. The one that's running here still got the remains of the domain instance on it, so it really should be paid, but I think I'll go new hardware. The other one that I rebuilt last fall, I think I'm going to pave it and Win 11 it because it's cranky for some reason. Yeah. So
Windows, I can't remember now. You think I would just know this off the top of my head, but Windows 10 is frozen on version, is it 21 or 22H2?
I thought it was 22H2. Yeah.
22. So when it comes up, I did that computer. I keep keeping that up to date. I have it on a Surface Book 2. And first couple of days, I was like, man, this thing will not go to 23H2. I'm like, what is it doing? I'm going to have to go download it, And then I looked it up. I was like, oh, yeah. They froze that in time.
There's a reason.
Yeah. Don't worry about that. Yeah. We have kind of a light AI section this week, but a lot of it has to do with kind of antitrust stuff. So that at least turns up the interest level a little bit. The UK CMA is looking at Microsoft's hiring of staff from Inflection. Mustafa Suleyman, right, the guy who runs their new AI division. They hired him and basically most of Inflection, which, like the OpenAI partnership you could view as a way to sidestep antitrust oversight because you didn't acquire anybody. You're just hiring people. That's what we do. We're a company. We hire people.
Yep.
But
and they wanted a job, right? Like,
yeah. No, I know. It's
not a hostile takeover.
No, but it could be, 10 years ago or 15 years ago, whatever it might be, Microsoft probably would have just bought this company, and now it's a different regulatory climate. Microsoft's a much bigger company. They already went through that Activision Blizzard thing, and it's pretty clear they're being creative about how they can get where they want to be without doing it the old way. You know, I'm not saying they broke any laws or that this is wrong. I think it's weird. And I don't mean that from the perspective of the UK CMA. I mean, they have OpenAI, they have these other partnerships, they have all these people in house. Let's hire someone else, and he'll run a new AI division, and it won't be Kevin Scott. You're like, oh, what's going on here?
No, and I think we talked about this at the time, which is that they don't know what to do about consumer AI.
Right.
All they know is that their enterprise guys aren't it. So let's at least make something new.
Yeah.
And see what happens. Like it's not a bad thought.
I associate this thought with you, and I'm not actually sure that I don't remember, but for some reason every time this comes in my head, I think Richard said this, but it's very clear to me that AI is not a thing. It's not you don't sell AI, although people are selling AI, companies are selling AI. It's really just a feature of other things,
Right.
And that if you look at something like Microsoft or Copilot for Microsoft 365 is a great example. These are the types of features that 2, 5, 10 years ago would have just rolled out to Microsoft 365. I mean, they make that product better. They use AI. I get it, but I don't know. We've drawn kind of a weird line here, and I feel like we're going to reach the point where no one's going to get all that excited about any of this stuff. We just talked about Microsoft Designer, and you can do Magic Eraser type stuff. That's kind of the point. You can't have a photo editing solution today that doesn't do that stuff. It's in everything.
It's a feature.
Yeah. And look, I know some will be a little better than others, yada, yada, yada. And there are very real advantages to have an NPU based stuff. But in the end, it's going to be that orchestration thing I was talking. It's going to be everywhere.
It should also just be plumbing, right? Like you shouldn't notice.
Right. Yep. I was I hadn't used this example in a while, but I brought it up with a friend from HP. I described it as MSG. It's a flavor enhancer. This thing's already pretty damn good, but throw a little MSG in there in the form of AI now, and it gets better.
Yeah.
You won't know why, but it's better.
Look, and there are different opinions about whether it's healthy or not, but look, it tastes better. That's all I know. It's addictive. But yeah, like trying to sell AI, especially to consumers.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think we talked last week about the Affinity deal where you can get their products for free for 6 months or whatever. Those products are fantastic. They're not particularly like infused with AI or anything. They will be, of course, right? So, I mean, even Adobe has got kind of a commercial or a creative professional market kind of sewn up for themselves, but there's a much bigger world out there. And I think that stuff's, it's going to be tough for them to differentiate, So anyway, we'll see with what Mr. Suleiman could do here, but
he's the one who got a little hot water by saying, it's okay if we just take everything on the open web. It's so.
Oh my God! In case he was basically he left because he had to, but he got into trouble at some previous company for
his big
basically
fat mouse.
just being big jerk. Yeah, and the fact that here we are 10 years later and he's like this came out of your mouth. Are you serious? Like that doesn't make any sense to me. I don't understand.
I mean, it might. I'm sure he believes it, and it's probably even true, at least. But it's not politic to say it out loud. He said the quiet part out loud.
Yeah. Don't tell people you're stealing from them.
Yeah, they don't like it.
People don't like it. Yeah, it's just like I don't.
And
people get prickly about it.
That you're stealing from, right? It's like I'm stealing from, and so what?
And so what? Because it's
but that makes But this is why when it works out that Microsoft isn't going to be able to sell AI, right? Microsoft's going to be fine, right? They're a humongous company. Mm-hmm. They're going to sell this back end that all these other companies are going to use in their services too. They're going to do great. But, they're going to find, just like they did with, Zune and Media Center and blah, blah, blah. Consumers don't care. They don't care about you. And everything that you're doing, everyone is doing,
Mhm.
So the fact that you stole from people and now they're stealing like your things too, it's like, yeah, good. Nobody cares. We hope I want everything you do to be available in open source and cheaper solutions.
So what do you think
And
of that
that's what's gonna happen.
spreadsheet LM that they're LLM they're talking about?
Is this the Microsoft or Google? Isn't
Microsoft.
that Google?
It's their new
the
AI
Microsoft
model
one.
designed to understand and work with spreadsheets.
Right. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
It was just a research paper,
actually.
just not a product. But it feels like this is them trying to find a justification, something you can do with it
Sure.
that you'll be glad that you have it.
You're going to charge me for Microsoft 365. That's going to be a feature of it.
Yep.
That's
It's
it.
going to be in
That's what I'm paying
Excel.
for. I'm not paying for AI.
And if it's not in Excel, what?
Yeah. Right. I know. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I want the thing that isn't Excel, but is a spreadsheet. Was it what?
Huh?
Yeah. That doesn't make any sense, but well, they're whatever. They're trying things. I mean, it's fine. Google has that.
No, and
I-
the
I
idea that somebody sends you a
Notebook,
complex spreadsheet and
hold
you can ask Copilot, "What's this spreadsheet say?" Right?
Yep.
That's interesting.
That's a great feature of Excel. It's an Excel feature.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
they can describe. This is what I mean. I think this is what's behind the thing I was talking about earlier, where Microsoft for some reason feels the need to explain the back end. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
Here's what I care about. Does Windows Update work? Is it reliable and quick? And do I have to reboot less? Excellent. Couldn't care less how you do that. Just make it better.
But
Don't
spreadsheet LLM is something to point to and say, "This is why you pay for Copilot."
Yeah. Except
Right.
ultimately, it's going to be this is why you pay for Microsoft 365 because that's
Hmm.
the thing that's going to sell. That's what people care about.
Yeah, they're trying to sell Copilot as a relatively expensive add-on, as you know. Although I think
Yeah.
they've lowered the price, but by all accounts, it's not selling that well.
No, and because what people find, and I don't know how you look. At some point, they'll insurtify this, but what people are finding when they pay or don't pay for, whether it's OpenAI or Gemini or Copilot or whatever is, the free one's pretty damn good.
Yeah.
Like I don't really need it that much.
But again, you get back to that where spreadsheet LLM might be interesting. It's like this is only in the paid version because it knows spreadsheets.
Yeah.
It's
Well, but
not
the
a
differentiator
generalized
there,
thing.
though, remember, I mean, Microsoft is the big controversy 5 to 10 years ago was Microsoft wants to get rid of standalone perpetual Office, right? They want to sell you an Office 365, what we now call a Microsoft 365 subscription.
Mhm.
Okay. And the way we do that is Microsoft is they add a ton of new features to the product over a year, sometimes from month to month, right? Depending on the year. And that there's the value. So there's some people like, yeah, I don't care, but there's some who
I
say,
didn't
yeah,
care
no,
about. I'm still hanging around with Office 2007 because
right.
close
It works
enough.
fine. Yeah. You might be running Office 4.2. It still works great. I don't know. It probably does. I hope not, but whatever. I know Windows will run it. So that's, the value prop
Yeah.
there. But so there's the divide. But the problem with the Copilot stuff is it creates this third tier. And there are actually multiple tiers because, multiple Microsoft 365s. But look, the thing you're really selling is a more expensive tier of Microsoft 365. Like the marketing of this of AI to me is the thing that's people are just like, yeah, I don't care. I don't, you said AI and I don't care because everyone says AI. Just show me a better spreadsheet and maybe I'll pay for that because no one cares about AI.
Yeah.
That's,
Well,
I don't know.
Well, and again, show me something I can't do right now. And the
Yes.
summarizers are a great one.
They are. Yeah.
That would
But
be
again,
compelling.
these are going to be everywhere. This is the problem. You
yeah. No, this
could
is where,
boot up some random browser like Opera. It has its own thing and say, summarize this document in Word, and it's going to do it.
yeah.
Is it going to be as good as the one that you pay for at Microsoft? Maybe not. I
Maybe
don't
not.
know.
But the power of Copilot is I don't have to go find the document and say, find me the latest spreadsheet with sales figures in it
Yeah.
and summarize it for me. And it goes and navigates the graph and finds it.
Right.
Goes from there.
I just
Like,
don't know.
they are positioned to do more with it. I don't know that they know how to. I don't know that they
Right.
know how to tell us how they're doing it.
Right.
But that power inside of M365 is substantial. Just got to surface it in a way that's going to delight people.
Yeah, I would start by not calling it AI in a press.
No, you're not wrong.
Yeah,
Well,
I don't
it's
know.
the-
I know
it's
that's a weird
it's the
stance. I
Copilot
just
name.
well, I mentioned earlier on the show this restyle image feature that's in Photos and apparently now in Designer. Right? It's It's pretty magical. Like, it's neat. And I said I did because I did really do this. I spent some time. I actually started looking for fun photos so I could throw them against different styles and see what those look like. But here's the thing. I don't need any of those pictures. Like, this is not a need. It's fun. It's cool. I am not going to save any of those things. I can't tell you I was impressed by them, but it's not a need, So,
I have a need to interrupt this.
Is it a need for speed?
It's a need for Big ID. I want to just interrupt briefly. We will continue with the fascinating AI discussion in just a little bit. But I thought it might be a good time to talk a little bit about, since we're talking about AI, about our sponsor, Big ID. So let me explain. Data security's, kind of like job one. It's all we talk about, breaches and so forth. But you also know you got to fortify against bigger problems. All custodians of data, especially modern CISOs, need proactive solutions. But luckily, there is something you can use, you can trust, that will help you secure your most valuable asset. That's Big ID, B-I-G-I-D. If you're a CISO, your job is to ensure that the promise of AI doesn't become a security pitfall. Remember in the early days of OpenAI, IBM and other big companies banned it. That's not the best solution. I mean, I understand, it's like, well, yeah, don't use it. But there are better ways. Big ID's generative AI solutions, Gen AI solutions, help you navigate the labyrinthine world of AI from the point of view of security, from your CISO's perspective. With Big ID, you can leverage solutions that take a defense-in-depth approach to automating manual processes, to improving accuracy and actionability, and applying AI and ML to cut through the noise, to improve risk management, and to enable a robust data security strategy. You can have both, AI and security. Big ID allows you to find and classify your data accurately and at scale, wherever it is, on-prem, in the cloud, structured, unstructured, semi-structured. I didn't know there was such a thing, semi-structured, covering hundreds of data sources. You know who uses Big ID? The U.S. Army uses it. Imagine where their data lives. In legacy systems, in the cloud, on-prem, all over the place. And of course, they want to use AI. They want to train AI, but they only want to train AI in data that's safe to use. That's what Big ID lets you do. You can minimize your attack surface through policy-driven retention management by removing redundant and outdated data. You can audit and inspect what data is being shared with AI, be alerted when usage policies are breached. Another company, another big group that uses Big ID, Telenor. They use Big ID to reassure their customers that they're handling data in a secure way. And, with the latest breach in a big company, telephone company in the U.S., you might think Telenor actually takes this pretty seriously. Here's the quote from Telenor. We want to solve customer problems and regulatory demands. We want to focus on the business and have a partner like Big ID to focus on the tech. We wanted a partner that understood what we're doing, who can help us. Companies who use Big ID are showing their customers that they are taking data seriously. Big ID has won a lot of awards in this space. Market leader in data security posture management in the Global InfoSec Awards. That's from Cyber Defense Magazine. Best data security company. That was the Cybersecurity Excellence Awards. A coveted spot in the Citizens Jump Cyber 66 report, which recognizes Big ID for elevating data management and security with first-of-its-kind AI technology. This is a name you need to know. You may have heard it before. It's a name, if you know it, check it out. Start protecting your sensitive data wherever it lives. BigID.com/Windows. That lets them know you heard it on Windows Weekly. BigID.com/Windows. In fact, you get a free demo there to see how Big ID can help your organization reduce data risk and accelerate the adoption of generative AI. Again, Big ID. It's BIGID, BIGID.com/Windows. There's also, they have a lot of white papers and reports that you can get there free, including one that will give you lots of insight and key trends in AI adoption. It outlines the challenges and the overall impact of generative AI across organizations. It's really good. BigID.com/Windows. You may not even know you need it, but you do. Thank you, Big ID, for supporting Windows Weekly. Paul Thurrott, Richard Campbell. We are continue talking AI. Are you the kind of person you use Windows betas? Obviously, you're an insider. Do you use the Apple betas?
Yeah, I do.
You do.
So, yeah, and I kind of go in and out of this, but because of all the stuff going on this year, I signed back up for the Apple developer program so I could get going on that early. And it was buggier than God. It was iOS and iPadOS were horrible until right after the third beta, and they finally caught up. But they're finally letting you move the icons around wherever you want and all this stuff. But to me, like, the bigger deal is just the automatic. They have dynamic themes now, which are gorgeous, and like they change color and like darkness over the course of the day. Really, really neat. And then Mac OS, I don't know, it's not a big deal. You can do that remote iPhone thing from the Mac, but I don't care too much about that. Obviously, what we're looking forward to here is the Apple Intelligence stuff, but that is not available as it turns out. So someday, But yeah, the public betas are available if you're not in the program, so you can grab all the non-Apple Intelligence stuff.
I wonder if they've overpromised on this.
Well, we are taking them at their word that they're going to roll it out slowly, and they are. So, I don't know.
I don't think it's that. I think they always said it. In fact, it wouldn't be part of the new version.
I'm not. Yeah, I don't know how clear they were, but I think there'll be a little bit right at launch.
Yeah,
and then,
There's
some later. Some of it won't be
issues. I mean.
Yep. Oh yeah. Yeah. Yep.
I thought this is not a. This was to the Mac observers on MacBreak Weekly. This is not a surprise at all. We knew this wouldn't have it.
Yeah, I think to a lot of people, because there was so much hype, and they're like, "Oh, here it comes!" It's like, it's okay. It's just that the Apple Intelligence stuff is really big. So the thing I equate it to was the iPhone 7 Plus. I think it was called, the first one that had two cameras. They were promising portrait mode with bokeh, and that didn't ship in beta until that November or December, whatever it was, and it was terrible. It was like the first version was awful. So that took a long time. That was just one feature in the camera app.
That's what I'm worried about with this is, like, I'm interested to see if we've all made this presumption that Apple's going to do this better, right? Because historically they do. They come in a little later, but they come in with a better solution.
Right. We'll see. I mean, I like their approach. I mean, so far
they've definitely got the branding and the concept down. Now the question is, can you make a product that does what you said?
And it is sort of what we just talked about. It's a bunch of features for other stuff. It's weird we're going to look back on this whole AI chatbot thing is like, what were we doing here exactly? I think, but
I've been having conversations with a few development teams and trying to utilize LLMs for various specific verticals. And the big battle for them is building a good enough tester to know when the thing is spat out garbage, right? They basically need a parser to parse the output of the LLM sufficient to at least have a gate in front of, nope, that wasn't right.
This is this is related to what you just said, but you just reminded me of a thought I had the other day where, because we're going to talk about some programming stuff in a little while, but when you target something like .NET, you have to deal with like runtime versions, and there are different ways to package that. And .NET is
code
this thing.
signing, like there's a bunch of
there's an additional level, it's not a big deal. I mean, but it's something, it's not just, there's something you have to think about. If you are a developer and you're, I don't know, you maybe make a video encoding app and you're like, or video editor, and you're like, look, there are these 3 SLMs, like LLMs you would install locally, and each one of them makes one of our features way better if you have an NPU, right? But we have to get those things on people's computers,
Right.
And it's not just updating the software that we make. They have to have this thing there too, configured properly, et cetera, et cetera. This is a daunting
Yeah. Not a
set
trivial
of
problem.
requirements right now. You know,
Getting software onto somebody's machine. Full
Yep.
stop. Harder than
because it's not a .NET runtime. It's not a .NET runtime install. It's like these things are pretty big. You know, some of them. Different versions. They're improving all the time. They're changing. The whole thing is a mess. And honestly, I think from a software developer's perspective, whether you're Adobe or some little guy, that's what's so attractive about targeting the cloud. You don't have to. It removes a bunch of the
that
complexity. Also expands the market, right? Very dramatically.
Now we're back to debating whether an MPU is really going to do anything.
I know. Well, it's important to see both sides of it, but it's we're in this transition period, so everything's a little weird now. We don't know where it's going to land, but
early times.
We skipped over this, but just real quick, Microsoft had gotten in trouble a couple of years ago in the EU for its cloud licensing. I think this is actually just Europe. I think it's the European Economic Area. There are European companies that have complained to the European Commission and other regulatory bodies that Microsoft's licensing in the cloud licensing specifically is problematic, and it is, or at least was. I mean, in the sense that Microsoft, and not just Microsoft, but Microsoft in this case, was making it very difficult for customers that got onto their cloud to get off of their cloud because there were all these exit fees.
Specifically exit fees. Yeah, it was exfiltration charges, right?
Yep.
We charge you to move the data back up again.
Yeah, Amazon and Google were doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Once Amazon and Google stopped doing it, they started complaining about Microsoft really vocally, which I find to be humorous. When this first came up, Brad Smith actually published a blog post where he's like, you know what? They have a point. We really do make this kind of hard. We're going to work on this. But it's been 2-3 years now. Google has been working behind the scenes to make sure that Microsoft is not able to settle this because Google is a distant number 3 in this market. The complaint, the worry here is not about Google. It's about these little companies, right? That maybe there are businesses in Europe that would run on a smaller local cloud infrastructure if they could. But just getting off of Microsoft is so prohibitively expensive, they can't even consider it. So Microsoft settled with a trade group that's representing most of these companies. We think that because
and got rid of their exfil charges.
Yeah, they did that. Right. So all 3 of those companies have done that. This has not been made completely public yet because I think there's still some groups that have to agree to this, but Google released the information because they were involved in the process. And I think it is going to happen, but I don't know. No one's ever going to be happy with big company like Microsoft dominating, a market like this. So I'm not sure they're out of the woods yet, but apparently, and they got out of it pretty cheap too. You would think this was going to cost them billions of dollars.
20 million.
I think it was 20 million, if I'm not mistaken.
It's a rounding error is what that is.
Yeah, for them, that's we'll give up a couple of mouse sales or whatever. And then so we talked about Opera last week, I think, on the desktop. They're beta testing a new UI on iPhone and I think iPad. You have to use Test Flight and get on a wait list. So I actually did this. It's actually a beautiful little app. They have their Area AI, which is available on mobile as well. So it's if you're an Opera fan,
nice.
Take it on the road. Leo, are you wearing you look like a Mouseketeer. What's happening?
No, this is a ZDTV hat.
Oh,
nice.
Vintage.
I'm actually rescuing a few hats that I realized I might have been premature in ejecting.
Yes.
Said the other word.
Yep.
There's a pill for that.
Yeah. Premature ejection.
It's an on-prem solution.
I really feel like we should open our doors to club members. They should just come in and grab a piece of, Twit memorabilia. There's so much stuff.
Yeah.
Literally hundreds of hats.
You got to be careful, though, because it's going to be like when the Berlin Wall fell down. It's going to be like a scrum.
In come the sledgehammers.
I'm taking this piece of wall.
Yep. Like this. What are you doing with the hammer?
I kind of did that already. I tore the logo off the wall. I wasn't sure how it was attached, so I started working on it, and it just came right off. It was just double-sided tape. So I'm glad because I did want the Twit bug.
Right.
But there's a lot more. Boy, is there a lot more. Including, by the way, I just found 3 unopened boxes of OS2 Warp.
Nice.
Wow.
If anybody wants them.
That's a while ago.
Yeah. That was the operating system that had XP built in, or not XP, NT.
Oh no, it was
NT,
3. It was.
yeah.
I think it was just 3X. It was.
Yeah.
It could run 16-bit Windows apps.
Was
The
that
question
what it
is,
was?
do you-
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Is the media working, and do you have a device to use
No,
that
I'm
media?
sure
Right.
there's
'Cause
nothing I can
it's,
do.
I think it's 3.5-inch floppy.
I'll go get it while you
It's not
talk
even
about
CD.
the modern world, the .NET
Yep.
9 Preview 6.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know how much time we should spend on this. This is almost a personal thing for me, but I did want to talk to Richard about this because he's
I'm
involved
surprised you're
in this.
diving
world.
in now when it's not going to ship till November. You were still talking about pretty early bits, although C#
Yeah,
13
so-
is now in.
I know, and I did not intend to go down this path now to this degree. Here's what happened though. So back in May, Microsoft announced as part of Build
Mhm.
that they were bringing back WPF, the Windows Foundation Presentation
Not that
Foundation.
they ever
right, which dates
really
back.
got rid of it.
Well, but as a first class, in other words, developers come to them and say, we want to build a new native Windows app. Like, what do you have? They would say
Yeah.
WinUI, which is really Windows App SDK. But
Mhm.
now they say we have that and we have WPF.
Right.
And the reason is WPF has, like Richard said, has never gone away. This has been used extensively. It's
They open sourced it though.
they open sourced it, so there's a community thing going on where they're keeping it up to date and everything. But 3-4 years ago, I had created multiple versions of a Notepad app called .NET Pad, right? Windows Forms, VB, and then C#, WPF, and UWP. And I put, I think just those 3, the last 3 they're up on GitHub if you want to go see that stuff. But if you bring down the WPF version of .NET Pad, which is my favorite, because that is my favorite Microsoft framework, application framework. It's dated, right? We have
Mhm.
Windows 11, which has this modern theming and styling with light and dark modes and stuff. And this is like looks not quite a Windows 2000 app, but it's, it's old school, like Windows 7, I guess we'll call it. And, it because Microsoft wasn't actively keeping it up to date. In fact, there was a period of time where they're actively trying to pretend it didn't exist. There's all this UI that's come and in some cases gone that it never supported officially, right? So part of the community open sourcing effort has involved different groups or even individual developers kind of bringing it up to speed so you can create apps that look normal or modern or whatever on Windows 11. So this will not mean much to most people listening or watching. I apologize, but when they announced this was one of the most exciting things that's happened to me in a long time.
Aw.
I was really,
So
really
cute.
happy about this. And I'm like, I'm going to bring this thing back from the dead. I'm going to modernize my app for Windows 11. So the way this is rolling out, like Richard said, is it's part of .NET 9, which will ship publicly in stable, I guess, in November.
Mhm.
So we have whatever that is, 6 months, 5 months now, whatever. It's going to be a while. And every X number of weeks, they put out a new preview milestone. So this week, they put out preview 6. But the week of build, they put up preview 4. And preview 4 is the version that added the code, added the functionality you need to begin modernizing WPF apps to look right under Windows 11.
Mhm.
Now,
It's just a flag, as I recall. You just have to set
yeah,
it.
it's basically 3 or 4 lines of XAML code that go into app.xaml, and it will eventually just be a checkbox in the UI link.
Yeah.
But for right now, during the beta, it's just like you just have to add this code. Now, they've done a horrible job of documenting this. There's almost nothing out there even today. But at the time, I had to watch a video and still frame it to get the code to figure out how to do what I just described. And, pretty quickly, I got the base UI up and running and looking like a Windows 11 app. Pretty exciting, but lots of little detail work to do. And then you start thinking about like, how can I modernize this, whatever. I was thinking as the other previews came out, there would be more and more functionality with each release, but there hasn't been. There was that one release and that's been it. And then over the past week or so, I was like, I've been working on it, not just over the past week or so, but in the past week or so, I just kind of hit on something and I realized I could do this like right now. Like I could do this now. And as of today, have almost completely done it. The only thing,
Wow.
Yeah, if you look at Notepad in the modern version that you get in Windows 11 in my app, the only thing I don't have, and granted it's a huge one, is tabs. And the reason is that the tabs implementation they're using is from the Windows App SDK, which is modern and whatever. That's not been updated for WPF. It's super old fashioned. It's kind of garbagey. But basically everything else, like the settings pane and the collapsible expanders and the little all that's it's all I
Just came
I've pretty much done it. Like it's there. So I have to go back and add things, or fine tune things, or whatever. It's going to take a little while. So it will be at the end of the year before this is kind of officially all. But I'm going to be able to document it, and I've been doing like high level overviews of what I've been doing. But
That's awesome.
It's really cool, and yeah. So, but
when
the
are you
thing
going to
is,
do
that, like,
an OS2 port?
Yeah. Well, you mean like the command line or the GUI? Because I was never
that's a
really
good
a
question.
big presentation manager guy.
It is Warp, so that was all about presentation.
Oh, and I have Warp here.
Yeah, it was.
This is actually version 1.3, refresh
Oh,
level
man.
1.30.1.
Yeah, so that's the. By the way, I think I gave you that. I think that was for me.
Oh, well, and then somebody, I guess, decided to live it up, and this is a CD-ROM
I think there are two things in your collection.
the
I believe that
CD-ROM version.
the first one is that old version of OS2, and the other one is the Lotus.
Oh, I have the Lotus books out there too. Yeah,
Well, it's the Lotus. It was for the Mac. It wasn't 1, 2, 3.
It was no,
But it was called something else. It was Lotus Symphony.
Symphony.
Yep.
There you
Symphony.
go.
That's
Yeah,
right.
it came in like a little leather book and everything. It was really neat.
Would you like
Came in-
some?
came in a frame.
Would you
I
like
used to
know?
make money off of figuring out what printers you could buy that would work with Symphony.
Yeah.
And with, your ActPack accounting software. It's like you had to build this Venn diagram up. It's like, okay, you're down to 6 printers that work with everything.
For you youngsters who may not
Right.
remember what
I
it
like
was
the use of a PS2 computer.
Yeah,
Nice.
to
PS2,
installing
yeah.
OS2. I'll just skip to the important part.
I like that it's multiple pages.
Yeah. Oh,
3.5
many.
inch
This is just the install book. To install the OS2 operating system, remove the installation diskette from the plastic diskette sleeve at the back of Using Advanced Features and insert the diskette into drive A. To insert 3.5-inch diskettes, insert the diskette into the diskette drive. The arrow side must be up and the arrow must be pointing to the diskette drive. Push gently
Good Lord.
on the outer edge of the
It
diskette
will make a very healthy chunk sound when it
until
gets
it
in there. It's
clicks
nice.
and drops into place.
Yeah.
And then they
Yeah,
also
that was
have...
quality.
Yeah, look at that. There's now you know you're in the right place. IBM launch.
I used to
stream.
love the IBM books. Remember they were in like those binders, and they would
look.
issue updates for DOS or whatever, and
Yeah.
they would replace the pages.
I think this might have that actually.
So
there it
the
is.
CD one
Yeah,
you have
gorgeous.
a chance of installing because you can get a USB DVD
I have
drive
it.
that
I
should be
do.
able to read
I
that
do.
CD.
But when you say chance, look at this.
Well, what you do,
Half-inch
you just
floppy.
download the disk
Whoa.
images
What are you gonna
online.
do?
And,
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! Actually, it's smaller
Yeah.
than I thought it would be. That's only 5 floppies. 2
yeah,
mega-
well, it's
2
only DOS.
megabytes.
That's the old one, right? That's just
Oh,
it's
it's
basically
just-
just DOS.
It's DOS.
It's like
Yeah.
probably a 32-bit version of DOS or whatever.
Oh my gosh! Guidelines.
And
when
are
writing
those
batch
720K or 1.4 floppies like that? They're old enough. They might be 720.
Oh, good. So
Yeah,
here's the
right.
good news. Here's our floppy
There's
disk
the-
drive.
Oh, yeah.
So
Jesus.
we're ready to go. In fact, I'm going to follow
Well, I
those
would-
instructions.
What
If you
are
were
the
going to install
chances-
this, I
Yeah.
strongly recommend a virtual machine and
Wait a minute. I underestimated. There's 2 per slot, so that's 2, 4,
Oh, there you
6, 8, 10
oh, there you go.
discs.
Right.
Still, you
But
know,
the last 8 are just printer drivers.
There's no way that disc still works.
It's only
This
20
can't
megabytes.
Possibly function.
listen to this. It works.
Clunk.
This is a Rayu floppy
Sure it is.
drive. Do you think if I
It's not
plug this into the HP, it'll?
I think it's going to
I
come
mean,
back
are
as
you
a blank
you
disc.
don't have a PS2 there? Come on, man. What are you doing?
Well, I didn't realize you were the one who gave me these. Thank you.
Just the old OS2, and then the
Would you like them back?
like I said, no, I would not.
You could send.
No,
I'll
I used to
send
have
it to Mexico.
I used to have a crazy amount of stuff like that.
Oh yeah. People thought.
No, that was just fodder for some future fire. It's just not.
Yeah, people thought that because I had a lot of space in the old place, that I wanted all their old crap.
Mhm.
So everybody said.
I actually didn't even consider that. I was like, I just don't want this, and
Leo will want
you
it
know,
for sure.
Leo will take it.
Leo
Leo
takes
has stuff.
anything.
Leo takes
Leo
it.
has
He didn't take
stuff he puts
anything.
in the background.
Here's it, yeah. Well, I have bad news for you. I don't know how much of this is going to survive the.
I don't think any of it's functional. That's rust.
Wait a minute.
Trying to store us on.
This one came with a bonus pack. I wonder what's in the bonus PAK.
Oh, it's going to be good.
Online access and more. Oh, IBM works too. Ooh.
Yeah, they had a deal with, Prodigy. They used to sell PS1 computers through Sears.
Right. It says disk. Well, that's a little confusing. It says OS Diskette 1 4 CD-ROM. I don't understand how that works.
Floppies for CDs.
You put the floppy in first, and then you can mount the ROM.
Because you couldn't boot from a CD-ROM back in the day.
Oh, yeah, you needed drivers.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh,
you're holding the future in your hands right there.
Right
now, those
there.
CDs might work, but there's no way those floppies work. Not a chance.
You think? Well, we might have to try.
The problem's going to be just.
I mean, you won't be able to.
It doesn't
boot
matter
them
if you
or
can read
anything.
the disc. Like, it's just not.
You can't do
No, I
anything
think that
with
disc
it.
won't. I don't think the rest of this is readable. I think you're going to plug it in. It's going to go. You want me to format this?
Here's how you learn OS 2.
Oh boy.
Yeah, it's right here.
Look, Windows. It's exciting.
Look at. Oh, this is how you use a mouse.
Yeah, it sure is. That's. Are you sure this is the right book, Leo?
Looks like ghost hands.
I wouldn't go to the next page. Oh.
Ah! Wow.
What an aesthetic.
Isn't that amazing? Preparing and installing dual boot, printing files, updating directory windows, displaying files and directories.
It's amazing we got anything done.
It was a lot of work. I mean, people don't appreciate that we didn't get here just coasting.
The expectations were small too, right? You weren't doing that much work.
No. Anyway, thank you. I forgot that you sent this to me.
Wow.
Now I know who to send it back to. I was wondering.
Well, I'm most of it did not come from me. To be clear.
Yeah. You sent me Symphony. I remember that. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Back to the future. Google Android Studio. We're talking still developer section. Unless are you done with .NET Pad?
I don't know, probably. Oh, just one thing real quick on the .NET thing. The work that Microsoft is doing to bring WPF back is based on that community stuff, and there's a couple of projects, but the one I think they just basically hired these guys or paid or whatever, but they took something called WPF UI, which is actually available as a gallery app in the Microsoft store if you wanted to just go see the stuff. Is something I might actually use because they have some controls that are correct for Windows 11 that are not in WPF, although I'm hoping that changes over time. So I guess my only point is I aside from a couple of small things and one big thing, like that work is pretty much there. Like it's done. Like you could modernize a 20-year-old app if you wanted to and make it look good in Windows 11. It's pretty exciting.
Maybe we should port OS 2 to .NET.
Well,
WPF.
it would have to be a 32-bit or better Windows app, but also written with WPF. Yeah, so Google had Google I/O back in May, as everyone knows, but now they're going on the road, and I think they're doing a couple of remote follow-up shows. This one was in India, and they announced a bunch of different things, but the one that was most interesting to me is they are bringing Android Studio to the web, is the simplest way to say it. They have something called Project IDX, which is a web or cloud-hosted IDE based on Visual Studio Code, extensible. It launched with a couple of workloads in preview sometime last year. Now it has dozens of workloads, hits all the major languages and frameworks, et cetera, web and in some cases mobile. So it's publicly available now. But now they're showing the first pre-release version of Android Studio running in the code. And Android Studio is their full-up, local IDE that installs on Windows, Mac, Linux, and Chrome OS, but running like hosted as a website or a web app, right? And so it's somehow integrated with Project IDX in the sense that you launch it as one of its workloads, but it's its own IDE. It's not based on Project IDX. I guess maybe the back end is, but they're bringing their IDE to the cloud, which it's pretty amazing, right? So it's interesting. that opens things up nicely. One of the stories I know that from Microsoft that really bothers me still to this day is that if Apple improved Safari, which they could, they just literally ignore the stuff on purpose on the iPad, they could bring full-featured Visual Studio Code to iPad, but Apple just won't do that work because they're trying to hold down web apps, right? They want to do native.
Everything go through the store.
Yep, and they're like, yeah, but you could develop apps for everything on this if you just, like, yeah, we're not doing that. So I don't know. Maybe someday that changes. Who knows? We're just getting the ability to move icons in an iPad screen right now. Maybe we should lower our site. But anyway, that's where they're at. So that's happening. That's very interesting to me. Anytime Microsoft with Visual Studio or Code, or Google now with Android Studio, I guess, or whatever. Apple doesn't do this with Xcode, but they could. You spread this thing to different platforms and make it more accessible. I think that's really exciting. So I don't really like Android Studio per se, but not having to install it locally doesn't sound like such a horrible idea, frankly. So
I have some wonderful, wonderful people I could tell you about. I'm actually a big fan. You maybe heard me talk about the Thingst Canary before. What is the Thingst Canary? We have one right here. One of our sponsors, actually, they're honey pots. They look just like external USB drives, but they have an Ethernet connection and a power connection. That's all. Inside is the smartest thing I've ever seen. I remember talking to the creator of the first honey pot, Bill Cheswick. We actually had him at an event in Boston, and he was talking about how hard it was to do to make a credible honeypot that will fool the bad guys. If only Thingst had been around. That Thingst Canary is so easy to deploy. You can literally do it in minutes, and it can impersonate anything. Now, mine over here is a Synology NAS, and I mean impersonate. I mean, it's DSM-7. You see the login screen. If you're a sharp hacker, you go, well, let me check the MAC address on this hardware. It's actually Synology, a Synology MAC address. Everything checks out, except it's not. It's a honeypot. And as soon as they log into it, you get a notification in any way you like it. Email, text, syslog, there sports webhooks. There's an API. I mean, literally any way you want it. But these are only the notifications that matter. It means that somebody is in your system, either a malicious insider snooping around, or worse, a bad guy who's gotten through your perimeter defenses and is now doing what bad guys do, kind of surveying the scenery, seeing what's in there, what they can steal, what they can exfiltrate before they encrypt everything and ask you for $35 million. You need a Thingst Canary. On average, companies don't know they've been breached for more than 3 months. That's a long time to let a bad guy be wandering around your system. But what do you have that will let you know? This is why you need a Thingst Canary. If someone is, they make Lure files too, by the way. I should mention that. You can create a Canary doc that could be look like a PDF or a doc or an XLS file. You can name it something juicy, employee information. I wouldn't be so blatant as to say social security numbers, but you could do, employee information. That's going to get them. But as soon as they double click that file, as soon as they try to open it, you get a notification. You will know you have a problem. No false alerts. It could be a SCADA device, an IIS server. It could be a Linux box. You can light it up like a Christmas tree with every service under the book, or you just judiciously pick a few juicy services. Then you wait. And when those attackers breach your network, or malicious insiders, whenever they made themselves known by accessing that Lure file or your Thingst Canary, you will know immediately, and you can take action. Ignorance is not bliss. Not knowing that they're in there is problem. Big problem. Visit canary.tools/twit. Now, some big operations might have hundreds of Thingst Canaries. Smaller SMB might have a handful. Let's give you the basic kind of 5 Thingst Canary model. You get $7,500 a year. You get 5 Thingst Canaries. You get your own hosted console. You get upgrades. You get support. You get maintenance. But I got an even better deal for you, because if you use the offer code TWIT in the How Did You Hear About Us box, you're going to get 10% off the price, and not just for the first month or year, but for life. Here's another nice thing. If you're at all skeptical, I wouldn't, trust me, this thing really works, but if you're at all skeptical, you'll be glad to know they have a 2-month money-back guarantee for a full refund. 60 days. Plenty of time to decide, is this worth it? But I got to tell you one thing. In all the years, and it's more than 7 years now, we've been talking about the Thinks Canaries. Not one person ever asked for a refund. They're that good. You might even say, I got them. I'm going to buy 5 and return them. Yeah, but as soon as you hook them up and you see how it works, you're going to go, actually, I need these. I'm not returning them. We love the Thinks Canary. In fact, if you want to see others who do, go to canary.tools/love. A bunch of stuff from some fairly well-known CISOs and others. But if you go to canary.tools/twit, canary.tools/twit, and enter the code TWIT in the How to Hear Your Hear Best box, you'll save 10%. And believe me, you can thank me later. This thing is a must-have for every network. Canary.tools/twit. We thank them for their support of Windows Weekly. Let me hear your dulcet tones, Paul.
Hello.
Oh, you're all better.
Hello.
You're all better. So in that case, let's do the Xbox segment.
Ooh.
Yeah, this is a big one. We actually touched on some of this last week, and I think this was happening as we recorded the show, so I wasn't 100% sure what was going on there, but now that I know the details, it's worse, unfortunately. The short version is that Microsoft did not announce this, by the way. A support document went up that had this information in it, and it seems like what they meant to do was announce something along with the news that they were raising prices on all the Xbox Game Pass subscriptions, neutering what used to be called Xbox Game Pass for console, and reneging on their pledge to bring all Microsoft Studio games to Game Pass on day one. So it's different for each tier. The more expensive ones like Ultimate, especially, obviously, well, not obviously, but to retain all the perks from before. But the thing that didn't happen alongside this information was, but don't worry, because we're going to give you all this other stuff and it's going to be fine, right? Because if they had come out with, and I think this was the plan, I don't know this, but I feel like originally the plan was, look, we're going to have to raise prices. Obviously, we've talked about this. You don't spend $68 billion on Activision and release a new Call of Duty game every year that makes several $billion and just roll that all into a Game Pass plan without raising prices. Something has to give, right? The thing that I would just remind people of, I don't think I said this last week, but Game Pass, when it first launched, was a way to reacquaint gamers with catalog games, right? The idea was by this point, Xbox had this whole library of content. They were doing backward compatible stuff. They were like, all right, maybe we can start bringing this stuff forward. And for developers that were never going to make another dollar on these titles anyway, this would be a way to make some more money too. So it's kind of a win-win. And when the Xbox One tanked in whatever year that was, 2013 or whatever, they realized, look, we're not going to, the console thing's not working. We're going to have to do something else. So they embarked on the strategy that they're still on today. They've expanded it, but they've expanded the notion of what it means to be Xbox as a platform. It's not just about consoles, right? So they have different tiers of these Game Pass subscriptions. They have one for PC, hundreds of games on console, 100-ish, whatever, maybe 150. I'm not even sure anymore, but fewer games, but still a pretty good library on Game Pass on PC. The PC world's a little different because multiplayer is just out there. Everyone has that. People get games from everywhere. It doesn't matter where they come from. They can't really do some of the things they do on console. It's a different world. And of course, they are also expanding into cloud streaming, like game streaming over the cloud with Xbox Game Streaming, which is a perk of the Ultimate subscription. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm not good at math, but $68 billion divided by X number of whatever subscribers, it's a long-term bet. So yeah, prices are going up. The most successful of those subscriptions is gone. That's the one for console. And the thing that replaces it no longer has that day one promise for the Microsoft Studio games.
And they haven't released the new games yet. Like, at least do this alongside. And
That's I have to like I said. I think that was the plan. I think this thing went live on their support website by mistake. I don't. There was no one has ever said anything publicly about it. It's weird. So this is not for the first time this year. I keep talking about this guys, please, say something. This has been a terrible year for Xbox. They just don't seem to do a good job of countering all the bad news, and things keep happening. And it's like, guys, you're losing us here. Like, this is bad.
So how you feel about the Microsoft Activision acquisition now?
Well, I still think it was fine. It's just that I don't understand why they haven't said what they're doing to give in other words, as a gamer, it doesn't affect anything, right? But if you're an Xbox guy, gal, or whatever person, the expectation is like, oh, good, I'm going to start getting access to this stuff. For me, that's why I might support that as an Xbox fan. That has not happened, with the exception of Diablo 4. There's nothing there. Like, what? I mean, and they just raised the price. Like, what? I'm paying. I'm not. I'm paid ahead now, but I mean, like, it's going to be $20 a month soon. That's how much I give Netflix. Like, come on. Like, it's got to be a better value than that. I think it's going to be. I think that's the point. But we're in a weird period of time here where they're just not talking. I don't know why. And they just raised prices. I don't think they meant to. And clearly there's announcements coming because they dribble stuff out. But dear God, what's going on? Related to this, every year there's a new Call of Duty game, obviously. Sony had an exclusivity window with Call of Duty for a while, which meant that they got everything first. That expired, actually, and I don't remember exactly last year. I want to say the last couple of years, we moved into a system where, like, the DLC and everything comes out across the platform same time. It's not, we don't, Xbox people don't wait any longer. But I believe this is going to be the first year where, if you're on Xbox, you can actually get into the early access and then the open beta at the same time as PlayStation. I could be wrong about that, but it's actually coming to Game Pass subscribers, so you'll be able to participate in the pre-release versions of the game. Although when the game comes out, you'll have to buy it because it's not coming out. Well, actually, that's not necessarily true. It depends on if you're paying for Ultimate. I guess you will get it. So there you go. Anyway, it's complicated, and if you had asked me in October, the day that this acquisition went through, and they wrote a check for $68 billion or however that went down, how long do you think it's going to be before you will be playing Call of Duty games on Game Pass? I would have said, I don't know, 2 weeks, 4 weeks. What are we talking about here? Could it be a year? It could be. Like, we're closing in on this, aren't we? Like, this is getting weird. So I don't know. I don't know what to tell you anymore, because I kind of support the whole thing. I like Phil Spencer. I like the strategy. I like what they're doing. I like the expansion of the notion of Xbox as a platform. Cross-platform play is fantastic in whatever form. It's good for everybody. And where are the games? Because right now I'm paying for a subscription. I want to get those games, and I can't.
Are we grandfathered in at the old price? Are they?
Yes. Well,
whatever time you've got left on it, right?
Yeah. If you had paid for a year, yeah, you're good. They're not going to, like, cut it down by some percentage. You get it for that year,
at
right?
the end of the
year. But next time,
wow. Yeah. Next time you have to pay.
So I'm really not grandfathered in. Next time I pay, a new price.
If you get a new computer and you get like 3 months of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, you can add it to an existing subscription and you can kind of push it out that way. There are ways to do it, but
just keep buying computers every quarter.
Yep. That's why I review computers. It's for the free Xbox Game Pass. I don't know if I mentioned this. It is very typical for new computers to have that offer, like 3 months of Game Pass Ultimate. The Microsoft Surface Laptop 7 came with 1 month of PC Game Pass. I was like, what? 1 month? And plus, oh, no, sorry, it was Ultimate, because PC Game Pass doesn't work on ARM. Right. It is Ultimate, so it was 1 month. So you could do cloud streaming only, I guess, which is like...
We had all these thoughts that Game Pass was just going to make this monthly collection for gaming forever.
Yeah.
And we'd get everything. And now they've basically undermined that.
Yeah.
Right. This is the thing.
It makes me feel like you just switch back to Steam and buy the game when it comes out.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, look, there's more to it than this. And by the way, the collection, especially on console, but even on PC, is actually good. It's not horrible. It's just that, because the consoles did so poorly, they added this like later, to kind of jumpstart it a little bit. They were like, all right, look, it's not like we own Activision Blizzard. We're going to give away these games day one to Game Pass subscribers. Like, nice. That's a really nice perk. Like, at $9.99-ish a month for console or PC, you're like, you know what? That's great. That's a good price.
Yeah.
The problem is now I don't know the exact number, but like they went from several studios to like 1 million studios.
Yeah, yeah. When you're only going to get one tier 1 title a year out of it,
yep,
$100 is fine. Now that
they could swallow
half the tier 1 titles are going to be owned by them.
No one will ever know for sure, but Halo Infinite did not do particularly well.
Yep.
And it was available day one. And one of the theories is, if you'd sold
learned
this
a
like
lesson.
It might have done better.
Yeah,
Now, there's no way to know.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Well, the other side of Game Pass would be a discount, or you get it a day earlier. A day earlier for gamers. I don't care what the price is; they'd be all over.
So
that.
you do get discounts when you buy games if you're in one of those subscriptions.
10% according to Out of Sync. 10% if
you do get that. There's also things like not every game is there. Like I don't remember off the top of my head. Right now, like Doom Infinite or whatever, or Doom.
As long as they have
more recent Doom.
Pixel Puzzle 6, I'm all in.
That's what's important.
Yeah. Okay, but the most recent Doom Eternal is available through the Game Pass subscriptions, but the original Doom 2016 is not. So it's like, okay, whatever. And again, I'm not going to get this one exactly right, but if you like Flight Simulator, for example, I don't know that every single tier of Flight Simulator is in there, but the basic, like the standard version is in there, I think is how that works probably. So they've been kind of, they're playing around with it a little bit as it is, but now that this has happened, it's like, well, I don't know. This needed to be counted with here's the list of all the Activision games and here's the day they're coming, or days, and it would be like,
maybe that's still going to happen, right?
Yep.
Like we haven't heard anything.
The problem is they just raised the price anyway. It's like you just raised the price and gave us nothing. Like, what are you doing?
But you said they never announced it, so it seems like a mistake.
The premise,
but they did raise the price. Like that price that went into effect.
Yeah,
yeah.
One of the reasons I bought an Xbox and a Game Pass Ultimate was the premise that, I'm a kind of a casual gamer. I don't really have I'm not like Paul. He has Call of Duty, and that keeps him occupied day in, day out. I thought, I want to dip my toe into different games.
Of course, but it makes sense.
But it turns out maybe I really belong to the PC master race, because I think the solution is you buy the game when you want it on Steam, and you got it.
And if you care about day one, then you're already signed up and you get it automatically. Yes. And if you don't, a year from now, it's 50% off.
So when PC Game Pass was only $10 a month, and it had 100 to 150 games, whatever, some which very, very good.
Mm-hmm.
You could kind of do a mix and match thing where you kind of go in and out, and maybe sometimes you're doing these games through Game Pass, sometimes you're not. You could sample a game through Game Pass, right? And say, okay, actually, I think I want to buy this thing. And maybe it makes sense because you're in Game Pass to buy it at that discount, or maybe it's on sale somewhere else, whatever. You can buy it however you want.
Well, especially in the scenario of a console, you could say you get 3 hours of playtime of this game for free. And then it goes away.
I mean, they do things like that, by the way. We don't really talk about that. In fact, I almost never talk about this, but they do like a free game, free play day thing where they have, like today you can play Call of Duty all day, whatever it is. They do stuff like that. So this was just in a year in which they really couldn't afford yet another kind of bad bit of PR. It was like, are you serious?
Well, gamers couldn't be more angry with Microsoft than they already are.
It's just so exactly. Exactly. And then we're going to prove you wrong, because actually it turns out you can be more angry. And we're going to go through with the price raise, but we're not going to make that announcement.
Yeah, we're not going to tell you.
So it's like, guys, what are you doing?
Just going to cost you more. Surprise.
Just really bad. Yeah, I know. I have never gotten Xbox game cloud gaming. Sorry, this name is just wrong to me, but to work well, of course, I want to play 3D action titles, 3D shooters, and they're just not good for this kind of thing. But I hear from people who are like, more casual games, whatever, it works fine. I think we talked last week that Microsoft had a partnership or has a partnership with Amazon to get the Xbox app with game streaming up on their Fire TV sticks, the new ones. Now they have a bundle for this Prime Day event, and it is an Xbox wireless controller, which, by the way, is on sale for $40 during Prime Day, with a Fire TV stick 4K and sorry, and 1 month, of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, so you can try this cloud streaming service and see if it works well for you, for $69. So it's basically you're paying $20 if you want assuming you want a Fire TV stick 4K, which I might question.
Why
you're
would
only
you
paying
want
20.
that? It's worth every penny.
You like ads. I don't know, like whatever it might be. You like I want interfaces that respond after I click the button. If you like that kind of thing, Fire TV stick, fantastic.
It's worth every penny. Yeah,
it is. You're getting exactly what you paid for.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Xbox controller is just $20. So
that's a good deal.
Normal price.
That's a good deal.
Yeah. So it's that's a good deal. Don't get it, but that's a good deal. This is awesome. As a huge fan of the Deadpool movies, this can't be real, but it is Deadpool Xbox controller where the back of the controller is his butt. And
oh my God.
It is, if you have seen these movies, you understand why this is.
I know why that is
unbelievable.
Rude. Yes.
Here's my commentary to this, though. I don't know why no one has asked this question. That has extra battery in it, right?
Yeah, it's not just space.
Clearly, there's a bigger battery. That's
a bigger something.
That would be right.
Oh,
there should be a bigger battery in there.
That's hysterical.
It is literally the Deadpool butt on the back.
It'd be very comfortable to use, though.
I think so.
Is it cushy,
probably find
or
yourself?
Is it?
I've not rubbed it or anything. I don't know.
They call it a cheeky controller.
It's cheeky.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cheeky.
It's pretty funny.
Wow. That is
brilliant.
Wow.
Brilliant.
Yep.
I'm actually kind of surprised that Microsoft went along with this.
Well,
a little too risque for Microsoft.
Yeah,
there is
but I
nothing
think it'll sell well.
Right now it's part of like a special promotion because it's the new Deadpool movie coming out actually next week, I think. And
that thing's not out already. Christ, they've been promoting it for months. I thought it was long gone, to be honest.
This is the allure of Deadpool. I'm not into comic book movies at all. In fact, if Marvel would disappear, I'd be the happiest guy on earth. But the Deadpool movies are hilarious, and even like my wife and my daughter love these movies.
He's just brilliant.
But
he really is.
My wife literally quotes from this movie regularly. Like when something goes wrong, she'll look at me and she'll go, "Well, at least we still have Bowie." Which is a line from I think the second movie. I don't remember the first and second, doesn't matter. But I like literally that's a Deadpool reference, and we use this not every day, but like almost every week. Like it comes up all the time. Anywho, that's hilarious. And then nothing on the Activision Blizzard front, obviously, but it's the second half of July. Microsoft announced 3 games coming to Game Pass, and all 3 are going to be day one titles, actually, right? So I feel like this was all part of something bigger, and they decided to hold back the really good news for some reason. So I don't know. Anyway, these were all coming sometime between the 15th and the 20th. I think they're all, and what's the date? They'll all be up by the end of the week, I think.
Awesome.
And that's it.
That's your Xbox. It's your Xbox segment, ladies and gentlemen. That's the stuff you tune in for.
Tough week for Xbox.
So let me just pause before we get to the back of the book. We got tips, apps, run as, and of course some brown liquor. But before we go much farther, you probably noticed that bits and pieces of the studio have started to disappear. And it might be giving you a little PTSD. It is me, because the last time this happened, we closed the brick house and moved. And we did a kind of like a week or 2 of shows with like things slowly being dismantled behind us. This one won't be quite as quick a turnaround. Well, that was a tough one. When we moved out of the brick house into the East Side Studios where we are now. So now it's 8 years ago we did that. It was a big deal because I told the team, we don't want any downtime. We want to flip a switch. We've done that twice now. It's going to be a lot easier this time. We're moving into my attic. And it's already pretty much ready to go.
I'm moving into my parents' basement.
You know,
That's what that sounded like.
Yeah, it kind of is. It kind of is. It's kind of like that. It's a lot cheaper in the attic. I don't have to pay any rent. Actually, turns out the city of Petaluma says we have to inspect it to make sure it's safe before you can.
Oh, I love it.
Before you can have a business up there. All right, fine. The reason we're doing it is to save a little, to pinch pennies, frankly. Ad sales has just plummeted. And it's not just for us. This is across the board. In fact, it's not even just podcasting, but it's really hit podcasting hard. It's hit all media hard. When's the last time you bought a magazine at the newsstand? But it's really hitting podcasting hard because podcasting as a newer medium is the first one to go. It's like last in, first out. And so while we were able to afford a studio for a long time, we just really can't anymore. But we want to keep doing the shows. I have this weird compulsion to keep doing what we're doing. I wanted to keep doing it. So that's why we need your help. I think it's perfectly viable. In fact, I kind of wanted to do this from day one. Didn't work, but I wanted to. I think it should be perfectly viable to be listener supported. If you listen to the shows, if you like the shows, if you want to keep the shows going, $7 a month, a couple of bucks a week. That's it. And with that money, honestly, we can really continue to grow and build and do all sorts of stuff. I don't think we'll ever move back into the studio. I don't think we need a studio anymore. Those days are gone. That was kind of an old-fashioned idea. So we're going to save that money. So every penny that you I should mention, neither Lisa and I are going to get paid for the next few months for sure. So every penny that you put into Club Twit goes right into Paul and Richard's pockets and the staff pockets and keeping the lights on and their houses and keeping the shows going. And well, we sure would like to get you into the club. There are benefits. Ad-free versions of all the shows. You get access to the Club Twit Discord where there are it's a wonderful community, really smart, interesting people that it will become your new social media. It has mine. It's really a fantastic place to hang, day or night. You also get special events. We've got an Inside Twit coming up. Mike is doing Creative Corner. And one of the things I'm hoping, having a studio in my attic will make it easy for me to toddle upstairs. And when I say toddle, I will toddle upstairs and do a show, maybe every day for an hour or two. Just shooting the breeze with you, answering questions, maybe bringing on guests, that kind of thing. Wouldn't you like to get a one-on-one, candid, no-holds-barred interview with Paul Thurrott? Wouldn't you love that? Find out what's really going on inside that He-Man physique.
He's normally the model of restraint.
Where did this go? What happened?
I will ply him with liquor, ladies and gentlemen. And if you join the club, you will hear the result.
I would definitely do an evening whiskey tasting with you guys.
Oh, there you go. Paris wants to teach me how to play Baldur's Gate 3. We're going to have some, I think it's going to be more clubby, frankly. And so if you want to join the club and help us do that, make this transition into something new and exciting and different, please go to twit.tv/clubtwit. And you know what? If you don't, that's fine. We will still do as much as we can. I don't like paywalls. I'm not a big paywall fan, so we will make sure that you get good content. But if you enjoy the content, it makes sense. Fork over a few bucks, a couple of lattes to keep it going. That's all I ask. Twit, because I'm going to have to send this laptop back. Twit.tv/clubtwit. There won't be a laptop here next week unless you join the club.
You're not being fair to yourself. When you started Twit, it was not old fat. This is so much.
Well, it was in a way.
More streamlined.
Here's why I say that, though. Nobody does a studio. That's crazy.
No, I know, but it's 2024. You're talking about 2004, 2005, whatever year that was.
And the reason that's why we built those studios is to tell broadcasters this is not some guy in his basement, right? But now it really will be.
Yeah.
So, and as expected, we bought Telos 1+1s for .NET Rocks.
What's that?
That was the telephone hybrid that gave us mix minus through the telephone lines.
Oh, yeah. Right, because you could do call-ins.
Yeah, so that we could have call-ins. That's how we brought the guests in. Yeah. That's what you did.
we've come a long way, and it is now possible to do.
Yeah, we were
some really
audio
amazing
only
stuff.
in the first couple
That's
of
right.
years.
We're going to keep doing video. I've already bought 2 cameras. Might have to buy a third one. I've started building the set in the attic. We moved a bunch of stuff over today, so I was a little bit late today. So we're getting there. I'm excited. To me, I'm a little sad because I love the studios. I get catered to when I come in here. They do all the work. I just sit in front of a microphone. But at the same time, I'm kind of excited. This is the next generation, the next era. Something a little bit more modern. Only in the sense, when I say that, Paul, it's because I came from old media. I thought, oh, well, you build a radio station or you build a TV station.
You were definitely a modernization of from.
We did it
old
much
media.
cheaper.
It's just that, but the world has. I mean, the world's changed so much. That's not on you. I mean, it's
Yep. It is. The world has changed, and it's fun. And you know what? Consumer technology means I can do stuff cheap, even cheaper than when we started. I bought 40. We are on right now cameras that are really kind of technologically way behind. These are Canon Vixia camcorders. And when we built the brick house, 8 plus 5, 13 years ago, I bought 40 of these. And they were
Yikes.
I think they were $800 each, something like that. I bought 40 of them, put them everywhere. And we thought, oh, this is great. This is cheap. Now, you can use your phone.
I know.
So
that's but by the way, how much does your phone cost? It's $800.
Well, that's true.
I mean,
that's a good point.
But but we all have one for other purposes. I mean,
I have one anyway. I'm actually
Yeah.
not going to use the phones. I'm going to use a Sony makes a really good cinema camera with an APS-C sensor called the FX30. So I've got 2 of those, possibly a third coming, and it's really kind of fun to see what. It's amazing. Our audio chain is worth tens of thousands of dollars. The Telos Axia.
Right.
It's a Telos also, but it's an Axia. And thanks to Telos, Kirk Harnack, and the Axia folks who kind of donated it all. And Kirk, I remember, came and set it all. It was like it was hard to set it all up. He set it all up, got it all working. I can buy now for $300 a Rode Podcaster Duo.
I know.
Mixer that does all the same stuff.
Yep.
Yeah,
So
I've got
much-
a Zoom P8 here. That's the same thing.
I love my Zooms. Yeah.
Well, with the pad insert.
Yep.
Yeah.
32-bit float. We didn't know from 32-bit float back in the day. So times have really changed. Anyway, I like the idea. I think it's a lot cleaner and simpler of having the audience support what we do. So we're trying that out.
I kind of picture Burke back there with like a 1950 style Disney camera or something. He's like, like one of those, like on a track going around the room.
Burke's going to have fun because he's going to get to do a lot of jerry rigging, I guess. We'll call it Burke rigging to figure out how to get all this.
You're going to chain him to a wall up there.
I might have
like
to.
The castle freak.
I brought
Leopoldo.
over the giant gear. I don't know what I'm going to, he's going to, and the sight sign that he revitalized, the sign from the old TV show I did on MSNBC.
Yeah.
The producer of the show who recently passed, now I understand why he called me. He said, would you like this? And I said, yeah, David Borman. And I guess he must have known he was on his way out. So I took it, but it needed a lot of work. And Burke took out there was custom curved fluorescent lighting around a plexiglass with the name of the site. He took it apart, put in LEDs, modernized it, and it's beautiful. And it's about 80 pounds on it. And I'm not going to leave it here. So somehow, I have to hang this giant sign in the attic.
Yep. It's awesome.
I might just put it leaning against the wall behind this scary clown and just, there could be one more item in the attic, one more toy in the attic. All right, back of the book. Thank you for letting me vent.
Yeah.
Please join Club Twit, twit.tv/ClubTwit. Your tip of the week. By the way, I know this because I've been buying a lot of stuff on Amazon the last couple of days.
Yeah, I haven't actually bought too much. I just bought a cheap little laptop stand thing, but
we waited to
Amazon
equip
Prime
the
Days.
studio until Prime Days, just hoping.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is the time. So, as I described it in the notes, it's the most magical time of the year. It's when so much on Amazon is Amazon is the reason for the season. That's all I'm saying. It's a
What season is this?
it's the
End
I don't
of
know,
July.
the middle
What
of the
is
summer.
this?
I don't know.
Yeah, the Ides of July. Oh yeah.
Everything's on sale. So look, whatever you were thinking about buying, this would be the time to take a look. Like the Eero 6E wireless mesh thing that I bought from Mexico.
Excellent.
Is significant.
Good and a great device. Yeah.
Yep. So just take a look at that. I mean, we did.
Well, they have a new
post,
clock.
but everyone's doing these posts. I mean,
I'm a fan of
Wirecutter,
clocks.
wherever,
Oh, that's
every
so
site's
old,
doing this.
Yeah.
And then the Epic is Proton Pass. Although right now I'm actually evaluating two other password managers. So Proton Pass. Proton's a company I've had my eye on now for a while. They've been really busy the past year releasing new products and lots of new features for their existing products. So it's the privacy security focused company that has, mail calendar, password manager, cloud storage, and I'm forgetting one, VPN. And really, so far the Proton Pass stuff has been awesome. The other one I'm evaluating, and they were an advertiser, but for I think their business class service is 1Password, which is kind of
they're an
widely
advertiser.
acknowledged as
Yeah.
being one of the better ones. I've been using Dashlane, which is great. The reason I went with Dashlane beginning of this year is because they have a passwordless password manager account, which is I love. But I'm just going through these. I have to say both these are actually pretty great. So and they all work everywhere, mobile, desktop, et cetera. So it's something to take a look at. They've added a bunch of stuff to it recently, but they also, I don't know if it's still valid now, but as of last week, we're having a sale. Proton Pass is very inexpensive. These things are all really inexpensive if you pay for them. I want to say I don't know what it is normally, but it's like $50 a year or less, or $30 or something.
I think it's about
not
right.
that much
Yeah.
money. Yeah,
I'm
it's
really
right in there.
curious. They must have a bundle of the mail, the drive,
Yeah, you can.
the
Yep, you can do all that
VPN,
stuff.
and
Yep.
the password all in one.
So these are paid services, but you're paying, they're not selling your information and a track, they're doing all this stuff, but their storage tiers get expensive quick. So once you go past like 512 gigabytes, which is like the most you can do without doing add-ons, it gets expensive. But if you're tired of Google stalking you around the internet like a psycho, and you don't mind paying for quality, it's definitely something to look at. So this is I didn't publish this article. I'm describing this as the gateway drug to the Proton ecosystem. It's so inexpensive.
Good. I want to. Yeah, I'm very curious myself.
Yep.
About
No, it's just
all the
this.
things.
This I can say this works fantastically well. It's really, really good.
Thank you, Paul, for your fabulous tips and picks of the week. But now I must say it's time for Richard Campbell and Run as Radio.
A little bit of Kermit the Frog effect there.
Yeah.
Something.
It ain't easy being twit.
It ain't easy being twit. No.
And one of the tricks we do on the Run As Radio site is the shows come in 11 colors.
Oh,
Right?
I didn't
They're
know
actually all of the Vista Metro colors from the original palette.
that I really
They
didn't
look
know.
like tiles.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Well, and one of the reasons for it was that I often have listeners who contact me saying, I can't remember what show it was,
but it was
that
green.
they talked about this thing. Well, that's exactly it, because I put that color everywhere. So whatever the show they're listening to, that color will help them get to the last
That's
11 shows.
hysterical.
And I make mugs in each of those colors as well.
Oh, I had no idea that there was a method to your madness. That's
Oh, no,
great.
there is much madness in my methods.
I feel like I'm owed a mug.
Well, all the cool kids have one.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
I should
I
send it to
have,
Mexico.
I have this.
You have the blue one. Yeah.
That's one of the Metro
That's-
colors. That's the
That's
Metro
one of the Metro
blue.
colors. That's
Wow.
right. Yeah,
Wow.
that's one of the Metro blues.
Well, that I'm taking to the attic with me. That's for
I hope so. Yeah. This week's show was from Build back in May, so it's got a couple of time on it, but it was a timeless show because I got a chance to interview Arun Ulag, who is the head of Azure Data, all up. This is the man responsible for all data-related stuff at Microsoft, from Azure SQL, Cosmos, Postgres, MySQL, all of the data analytics stuff, the warehousing, and so forth. And he actually, before that, was very much on the analytics side. He's one of the architects of Power BI. And his focus today is on the thing they call Microsoft Fabric. And so this show ended up really being a conversation about his experiences in data analytics and how it's evolved over the years in the industry that's led him to creating Fabric. Really, this idea of how are analytics different when you have effectively infinite storage and infinite compute via the cloud. So you don't have to do all the planning you used to do for data analytics projects, where, well, once upon a time, if you have to buy that hardware, you spend a year in analysis trying to figure out what's that data warehouse is going to look like. How big is it? How complicated is it? What are you going to do with it? And that's just not necessary today. Microsoft's had plenty of data analytics offerings before Fabric, but they were very much ports of services that used to run on-prem now running in the cloud. What's really happened here is they've realigned them all to be very analytics driven, where the analysts can push through the various layers down to the back end of data and back again, and still be able to be properly governed and controlled. So if you listen to it, it's a very fun conversation. We're really enjoying each other because we're a couple of old data analytics geeks, just rattling on all the different stacks and how things have changed. And in the process, you sort of get a picture of his vision for where he wants data analytics to go inside of Microsoft.
All right. I look forward to it. Run as Radio. You can find it easily enough at runasradio.com or wherever, as they say, podcasts are stored and forwarded to your machine. Now, let's get brown. It's not easy being brown.
It's not even, it's a little easier, actually. I'm going back to Canada. One of the reasons is that this weekend is celebration weekend up here on the coast for me and many of my friends. My birthday, my wife's birthday, a ton of friends' birthdays, all fall in this week-long period. Thank you.
Nice.
And so they all come up. We used to do this at my house down in the city, but now we're going to do it up on the coast, which people are really excited about. So there's a lot of whiskey coming. And one of the bottles coming is this particular edition, the Crown Royal Blender's Mash. And it made me think about going back to the Canadian whiskey stories. So I went back and listened to when I first mentioned Crown Royal back in like 814, when I was not even I was just guesting. And so sort of threw that in there. And then we did that 20-minute or so bit on Canadian whiskey where I talked about the Prohibition games and all that sort of stuff. But I never really drilled into the origins of this particular whiskey and this whiskey maker, which is Seagram's. Because it's, and as I drilled into it, it's like, I should talk a little bit about Seagram's because this has been around a long time. And then when I actually got into the story, it's like, I am reading the script from Succession here. It got kind of nuts. The Seagram's company is a crazy story. And not because of the guy named Seagram's.
Because of Bronfman or?
Bronfman. Yeah, it's absolutely the nutty story. So if you go all the way back to the beginning, 1857, so that's pre-Confederation. Canada is not yet Canada yet. A group of folks, none of them named Seagram's. This is Hespeler and Randall, create the Granite Mills and Waterloo Distillery. So they're bringing grain into Waterloo, which is on the lake, and making flour from it. And then any leftover grain that they haven't got sales for flour, they're going to make into whiskey as sort of the side venture. And this was the town of Waterloo in what was then known as Upper Canada, because it's not Ontario yet. Canada's not a country yet. And they start making a rye whiskey. They were German immigrants, and so their rye whiskey was called Altkunschnaps, for old rye, because they were mostly processing wheat, but wheat whiskey by itself doesn't taste particularly good. But if you add a little rye to it, it's get a little spicy. It's tasty. It's all good. So that's 1857. By 1864, they hire a fellow by the name of Joseph Seagram, who is taking care of one of the partners' interests. At this point, they've scaled up to making about 50,000 gallons of spirits a year. Of course, all still sold in barrels at that time. And within a decade or so, by 1883, Seagram has brought out all of the partners and owns it entirely himself, and renames the company Joseph Seagram Flour Mill and Distillery Company. A few years later, he'll make his first named version of whiskey for Seagram's, called the Seagram's 83, based on the fact that he bought it in 1883. And by 1911, during World War I, he's brought his sons into the company, renames the company Joseph Seagram's and Sons. And that's about as far as it goes on the Seagram side, because now comes the Bronfmans, right? And Samuel Bronfman, this guy's got a biography for a reason. He's like a force of nature. Born in 1889 on a ship traveling from what was then known as Bessarabia, now we know it as Moldova, to Canada. And they ends up his family lands in Manitoba, and they get in the hoteling business. But in the 1920s, as prohibition has taken hold in the U.S., they realize the opportunities for distilling are huge, so they set up a distillery in LaSalle, Quebec, and then they call the company the Distillers Corporation Limited, which I think was a play, because this is a time when Distillers Company Limited out of the UK was the largest entity in Scottish whiskey. And in fact, by 1927, at the height of sort of the stock craze, they make a deal with the Distillers Company to sell half of their business, to get away from the name conflict, but they also get access to all the distribution rights for the popular Scottish blends at the time. So that's Haig, Black and White, Dewar's, VAT 69, all big. The next year, Seagram's goes public, and DCL, Distillers Corp, basically buys them out. Essentially does a forced merge by buying enough stock quickly enough on leverage to end up essentially forcing a merger. And this becomes a theme with the Seagram's leadership with the Bronfman family, that they do a lot of forced takeovers and hostile takeovers of various companies. So the new entity in 1928 is called Distillers Corporation Seagram's, and basically the Seagram's family is a minority shareholder, and off they go. This is when, of course, during U.S. Prohibition, and the Canadians are allowed to make whiskey. They just can't sell it directly to the U.S. And I think I told you this story back in the Canadian story, where they use the islands of St. Pierre and Milton off the coast of Newfoundland because they're actually French protectorates, and the French couldn't care less about Prohibition. And so they would ship all of their whiskey to St. Pierre, this tiny little island that used to just be a cod fishery, now was covered in warehouses storing various kinds of booze, and then would sell it as a French entity into the U.S. And when the U.S. gets upset about that, then they start putting them on ships and going just offshore, so that they're outside of the country borders. And then the American citizens go out to the ship, have a party, and come home with cases of booze, like all workarounds, one after the next. The Bronfmans went maybe a step too far, because they started using Milton to sell whiskey back into Canada to avoid the taxes. And so as Prohibition ends, they actually end up in investigated by the RCMP, but managed to make a settlement so that the case gets dropped. Now, tying this back to our whiskey in question, in 1939, now named Seagram's, they get rid of the DCL name entirely, decides to make a special whiskey in honor of King George VI and Queen Elizabeth, which we generally know as the Queen Mother, and mother to Queen Elizabeth II, RIP, on the very first UK royal family tour of Canada in 1939. So George and Elizabeth came by ship up the St. Lawrence and landed near Ottawa, and then took the train, which was part of Confederation. Right? The reason that Canada is because they put a train line all the way across, all the way to Vancouver. In fact, there's a road in Vancouver called the King's Way, because it was built for George VI to be able to go from Port Moody, where the train line ended, over to Vancouver proper. And it's the one road that does not connect with the grid system that is the rest of the city. It sort of bisects it. And I've seen old photographs of literally was a dirt track through the forest to connect the two parts, these different pieces of Vancouver together. So, and they make this version of whiskey. They put it in the purple pouch because it's royal colors with gold stitching on it. And you can still buy, Crown Royal in the purple pouch. Good for your D&D dice, yes. And apparently the royal family goes home with cases of it. And for 20 years, it's only sold in Canada before it's finally opened up to a foreign market, specifically the U.S. So Seagram's is a hit. They're doing very well, and they start buying up other distilleries and wineries. They buy some, they start importing rum from Puerto Rico and Jamaica. They end up owning the distilleries that make Captain Morgan and Myers and Trelaways. They even buy Chivas in the UK. Because this is all Sam Bronfman and his aggressively growing the business. And when that slows down, and they kind of are one of the largest booze makers in the world, they branch into petrochemicals. So initially it was Canadian. They brought Royalite in Alberta, but then they bought Texas Pacific Coal and Oil and the Frankfurt Oil companies. At this time, they build a skyscraper. At the time, the most expensive skyscraper in the world in 1958 in New York for their New York petrochemical operations called the Seagram's Building, which is generally still known as, even though they don't own it anymore. And so by 65, Seagram's is operating in 119 countries with in excess of $1 billion of annual revenue. They are a monster at that time. In 71, Sam Bronfman dies, and the sons and uncles start fighting. The company is controlled by the Bronfman family. The shares have been distributed. Even though it's a publicly traded company, they have the majority voting shares. They call it the Seagram's Company, and they sell off the Texas Pacific operation to Sun Oil Co. for $2.3 million in an effort to buy Conoco, one of the largest oil companies in the world.
From booze to oil. Okay.
Yes, they're still making booze, but they're doing this. And again, they do this as a very hostile takeover approach. And so the board brings DuPont in to buy them instead of allowing Seagram's to do it. And DuPont pulls it off, buys for $7.8 billion. But in the process, because Seagram's had bought up a big chunk of the shares of Conoco, they end up owning 25% of DuPont in the end. They're actually the single largest shareholder of DuPont at that time. And DuPont, because it's also a family-owned company primarily, pays massive dividends every year to shareholders, to the point where within a few years, 70% of the income of Seagram's is DuPont dividends. So they have a lot of cash. Their businesses are almost secondary to the point, and the family gets even crazier. And so the 1990s, they decided to get into entertainment. Now, they've been pushed to sell DuPont for a while, so they sell their stake for $8.5 billion. Attempt to buy what then time was known as MCA, now we know as the Universal Music Group. So they end up owning the movies, the movie business, the music business, the theme parks, all of that. And don't know how to make money on it. It is like Succession. And in 2000, because they're mismanaging all these different businesses, the family's all fighting, they get bought by Vivendi, the luxury brands holders, for $42 billion. But in the process, the Bronfman family collectively only owns about 25% of the company. Actually, 25% of Seagram's, they end up owning only 8% of Vivendi. So they have no say. They're on the board, but they have no control. And as the fights go on, Vivendi spins off all the liquor businesses. So Chivas goes to Pernod Ricard, and Crown Royal and all of those other products end up in Diageo.
Oh,
so that's the end of the Bronfmans in booze, but that's sort of the pattern of this entire thing. And it's just a nutty story about Seagram's. Basically is just a brand now. It's not it's not a company per se.
But
it's
Crown Royal,
Diageo.
Blender's Mash, still an excellent.
We need to go back to how does Canadian whiskey different from other kinds of whiskey? The rules of Canadian whiskey are a little looser. The big one, of course, is that they must be mash distilled and aged in Canada. It can only be made with cereal grains, and it has to be aged in wood no less than 3 years and must be at least 40% alcohol to be called Canadian whiskey. Oh, they also have the phrase, and I just went back and double check this on the Canadian government site. Must, quote, possess the aroma, taste, and character generally attributed to Canadian whiskey.
Whatever that is.
I don't know what that is, but okay.
That's hysterical.
And now let's get into the favorite rule of them all, the 111th rule, or what's now known as the 909 or 9.09% rule, which is to say that Canadian whiskey can still be called Canadian whiskey with up to 9.09% of other things in it. Now, that could be coloring, it could be flavoring, or it could be another spirit. Although if it's a spirit, that spirit has to have been aged for at least 2 years. which pretty much means it has to be some kind of barrel-aged spirit, but it can be any kind of barrel-aged spirit. It can be wine, it can be brandy, it can be whiskey, sherry, port, like some kinds of tequila and rum are aged in wood. Like all of those would qualify under the 909 rule. Now, why does this rule exist? This rule is insane. Like, who would invent this rule? And it turns out it's because of America. So as American whiskey was struggling in the 70s, like most whiskey manufacturers were, they went protectionist and added large tariffs onto imported whiskeys. But there were a lot of influential Americans, including some in the Senate, that loved their Canadian whiskey and didn't want to pay more for it. And so they said, hey, if at least 1/11 of that drink is American whiskey, then it doesn't get taxed at the same rate.
Oh, wow.
And so the Canadians clued in and went, okay, we'll make a rule, the 1/11 rule. It's still Canadian whiskey as long as it's 1/11. So it wasn't only restricted to export, but it was done so they could export to America at a lower tariffing rate. In the end, it's all about taxes.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow.
But there's a side effect. As insane as it sounds, because there's still restrictions around it, it does open the door to things like they didn't have to struggle to buy sherry barrels to do sherry finishing when they could just add a little bit of sherry to the whiskey. And in fact, things like Alberta Premium Dark Horse has it's mostly Canadian whiskey, 92% of it, and then 8% of it is old granddad bourbon with a little less than 1% sherry in it. There's a whiskey you cannot find anymore called J.P. Weiser's Union 52 because it's 96% 15-year-old Canadian whiskey and 4% 52-year-old Scottish whiskey. It's weird, right? Like Canadians approach whiskey from a different perspective. One of the most important things to know, and it directly affects Crown Royal and all of the variations, is that the normal approach, because they're not restricted the same way in their barrelings, is that you make separate grain whiskeys and combine them after the fact. So you'll malt and mash and distill wheat separately from rye, separately from barley, and put them all in barrels separately as well. And then combine them at the end to make particular versions of whiskey, to the point where Crown Royal, the original Crown Royal, was 50 different whiskeys combined in different ratios. Now, I can't think of 50 different ways to make whiskey, and I don't know if they can either, but there's two core concepts here. There's this idea of base whiskeys and flavoring whiskeys. So a base whiskey is something you distill to a high level, like up into the 60s and 70% range. Probably higher than that because you use a column still. Then you cut it with water and put it in used barrels, right? So typically distill with a column still because it's fast and efficient. Then you level it off to say 63.5, the magic number, put it in ex-bourbon casks or put it in sherry casks, things like that. The flavoring whiskeys, they come in much lower in the 50s. And then put them into raw barrels or other more temperamental barrels where you don't want to pull too much flavor from the wood, just a little. And so you age them for less time and at a lower strength. So you're able to tune all these different additions, different grains at different concentrations in different kinds of barrels, and then assemble them into the whiskey you want to make. And so, like I said, original Crown Royal, 5 different kinds of grain, 50 different whiskeys, all told with different barrelings to get to that particular edition, which speaks to this fact that all Canadian whiskey is blended. It's just that our thought, when you hear the word blended, you think mostly neutral spirit, but that's against Canadian whiskey rules. You can't call it Canadian whiskey you put neutral spirit in. You have to have aged it. So blended whiskeys from Canada don't have any neutral spirit in them. But virtually everything is blended because you're always combining multiple barrels from multiple sources and multiple grains. So now we get back to Diageo. What is Blender's Mash? Well, Blender's Mash is actually a subset of the whiskeys that make the regular Crown Royal, focused particularly on bourbon. In fact, the original version of it made was called Bourbon Mash. And they even got permission to sell it in the US called Crown Royal Bourbon Mash, except that it made a lot of people angry because it's not bourbon. And so they renamed it to Blender's Mash. Now, it's got a 3 grain mash bill, but understand that these were each different barrels. So 64% corn, 32% rye. I'd consider that very high rye, 4% barley. That's typical. But understand they didn't actually combine those grains together and then make an addition. They literally used more corn barrels than rye barrels, than barley barrels to make the combination. Drink wise, the way it's described, and I'll have to taste it. I haven't had a chance to taste the bottle because they're fairly rare now. They say it tastes a little like bourbon and a little like Canadian whiskey. So it's a little burny. It's got lots of heat. It's spicy because it's got a strong rye flavor, but it's also very sweet because it's very corn heavy. And it is inexpensive if you can find some. I found that Total Wine had a few bottles at $27. So a bargain, actually, for an interesting Canadian whiskey. And Diageo is now going down to an array of different combinations based on the barrels that they already lay up for making Crown Royal.
Does it still come in a velvet pouch? That's all I care about.
Yeah, that's all that really matters.
There are different editions that come in different kinds of pouches. They've got a new one called Golden Apple, which is supposed to be 26-year-old Canadian whiskey that's got an apple flavor to it.
Ooh.
But it's got a green bag that comes. It's also $250, so don't.
No. No.
Come on.
No. It doesn't taste like apples. No.
Well, and the maple one is a little horrific, but some people like it. The peach one is apparently
I think those would be good for cocktails.
Yeah, they're all for cocktails, really. But that's where the Golden Apple makes no sense. $250 bottle of whiskey I'm going to put into cocktails. That's crazy.
No.
You're right.
Yep. But this just digs further into what's distinctive about Canadian whiskey, and that Diageo is doing right by the brand. They are kind of sticking to. They're not using the 909 rule as much, not certainly for just the export stuff, but they make their own edition of whiskeys, and they're exploring making more editions around their whiskey technique, which is cool. It's distinct to Canada.
Well, there you have it. Of another fine whiskey for you to sample. This show is turning a lot of people into drunks, Richard. I think you should be very proud.
Yep. It's the right way to
I think you can see over my shoulder that I have my that's the Elburn that's sitting there. Oh, this side. Yeah.
Is that in a decanter? Do you have that in a decanter?
I put it in my decanter, yes.
And why is that? Just because you want to have it quickly and easily available, or is there some?
Yeah, and I think it looks better.
Yeah, it's pretty.
You know, it's good.
Although I like to see the labels. I mean, the whiskey bottles, they put like wine. They put a lot of effort into that.
They're beautifully developed, right?
Yeah.
So, but I have a nice decanter set, and I'm doing my Mad Men thing. I think
that's nice. Yeah.
My set sits in my office, readily available.
I was so tempted to buy a martini set like as seen on Mad Men. I love that idea.
Yep. It's legit.
Yeah. Is that beautiful crystal? I bet it is.
That is Bohemian Crystal, a genuine article.
I bet it is. He's got class, Paul. I don't know what he's doing on this show with us, but
I got it in Bohemia when it was just, they call it a decanter.
They call it it's a decanter. Yeah, it's all it is. Decanter.
Yeah.
Paul Thurrott is at thurrott.com. That's his website. Become a premium member and get all the goodness there. You can also get his books, Windows Everywhere, and the Field Guide to Windows 11 at leanpub.com. Nice site. You get to pay what you want on that site. I actually wanted to do that with a club, but Lisa said we couldn't. Yeah. She said, the problem is there's the overhead for the credit card, and then there's the, Patreon takes its chunk, and by the time we're done, somebody's going to say, I'll pay you $1, and it's going to cost us $2 to make them members. Yeah. She probably has a good point there. $7 about as low.
She should do money stuff for you guys.
She should, because she's got a head for it, doesn't she? She's got it's all in the brain. She's very smart that way. Paul, thank you for being here. You're going to be in Macungie for a while, or?
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe. Okay. Richard Campbell. He is in beautiful Madeira Park, British Columbia. Mm-hmm. You're going to be there for a while?
Yeah, until end of August.
Oh, this is the summer break where you don't travel.
It's going to get weird in June or September, but we'll get there.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Richard's at runasradio.com. That's where you'll find his excellent podcasts, both Run As Radio and .NET Rocks. But you will find both of them right here every Wednesday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1800 UTC. Now, where is right here? Well, there are many places you could watch live. You can watch on the website, twit.tv. You can watch on YouTube. You can watch on Twitch, twitch.tv/twit, youtube.com/twit. You can watch on Facebook. Yeah, we're on Meta. You can watch on LinkedIn or Kick or even x.com. So please watch us live. We love it when you watch us live. But if you want ad-free versions of the show, join the club and download it, because it's, obviously when you're watching live, you're going to get the ads. Club Twit is at twit.tv/clubtwit. After the fact, on-demand versions of the show available at the website, twit.tv/WW for Windows Weekly. There's also a dedicated YouTube channel to Windows Weekly. And, of course, the best way to get the show, subscribe in your favorite podcast player, and that way you'll get it automatically as soon as we edit it all up. Kevin King, our wonderful producer and editor, is going to go to work on it in moments. Thanks, Paul, and thanks, Richard. Have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next week on Windows Weekly.